Chapter 65. The spaghetti was cooked just right. It was neither soft nor hard, but it was chewy. The gravy of the black pepper beef fillet also soaked every noodle. With just one bite, the aroma of the meat overflowed and the taste buds exploded. Delicious. These words were shouted out by Shishi. The little girl's table manners were not as good as Mom's, and she was completely unaware that the spaghetti had thrown a piece of meat sauce on her forehead. Murphy was very reserved. Although it was delicious, she still maintained an elegant posture. She just glanced at Yang Yi in surprise, then held her hair, lowered her head, and slowly tasted it. Yang Yi couldn't help but laugh. He went to get a towel, and helped the little girl wipe her face. He also said softly, "Don't worry, no one will snatch it from you. Look at you, you've eaten so much that you look like a big dirty cat." Quick. She couldn't help but twist her little butt. She couldn't wait to continue eating. Murphy looked at the interaction between the father and daughter, and the corners of her mouth couldn't help but curl up slightly. This kind of warm feeling was like a cloud, lingering in her heart. After Murphy finished eating slowly, Yang Yi pushed the fruit salad forward and asked with a smile, "How is it? Not bad, right?" Yang Yi was still very confident in his cooking skills. Mo Fei rolled her eyes at Yang Yi. The eyes of the ice goddess could be said to have melted the ice and melted the snow, turning purple and red. It was extremely charming. But Murphy didn't want to praise him, so as to avoid Yang Yi, this guy, being cocky. However, Murphy still couldn't help but ask in her heart, "Where did you learn to cook Western food?" Yang Yi had long known that Murphy would ask this question sooner or later, so he had already prepared an answer. He said calmly, "Haven't I traveled extensively for many years, and worked as a security guard and a waiter? I secretly learned it from a chef in a hotel." Murphy didn't have enough life experience, so she didn't know that this reason was actually nonsense. How could cooking be learned by secretly learning? She was naive enough to believe it. At the same time, Mo Fei also felt sympathy for Yang Yi. She inexplicably felt the hardships that Yang Yi had gone through all these years. She almost shed tears. She muttered slightly in a low voice, "Then why didn't you come to me?" "What?" Yang Yi was helping Shishi clean up the mess. The little girl ate so much that the noodles were thrown on the table. "Nothing." In order to hide her emotions, Mo Fei pretended to be unhappy and asked, "Why haven't you cooked for me before?" Speaking of this, Murphy felt wronged. Yang Yi was stunned for a moment. A sense of irritation arose in his heart. This was an emotion that originated from the memories of his predecessor. "You haven't even stayed here for a whole day. No, not even half a day. What chance did I have to cook for you?" In the end, Yang left Yang little Yang Li and little Nor. "I'm very busy." Murphy pursed her lips and didn't know how to respond. In fact, she didn't dislike Yang Yi, and it wasn't that she didn't have time to get along with Yang Yi before. But the previous Yang Yi had a very bad temper. That kind of feeling of three different views. Murphy felt that she would suffocate if she stayed with the previous Yang Yi for a while. Now for some reason, Yang Yi had changed a lot. Although his temper was still a little bad, he actually did a lot of things that he wouldn't touch before, such as Western food, coffee, and these foreign foods. Yang Yi was very old-fashioned and thought that they were spiritual opium. The current Yang Yi, Murphy felt much more comfortable to get along with. "Since you learned how to cook, why didn't you open your own restaurant?" Murphy didn't want to talk about emotional topics, so she changed the topic. Yang Yi frowned and said, "I don't like to be a chef. I want to cook because I want to live a more exciting life." He glanced at Shishi and added, "Moreover, I only want to cook for myself, or for the people I care about." Well, that little fatty who shamelessly came up to her didn't count. At most, he would eat Shishi's leftovers. Hearing Yang Yi's confession, in Murphy's opinion, Murphy's heart was about to be melted by Yang Yi. But suddenly, she remembered something that she had been brooding about before. "Oh really? You cooked for that Xiaokai's mom?" Murphy couldn't control the sourness in her heart at this time, and blurted it out. Yang Yi was stunned for a moment, and he said frankly, "No." "What do you mean no?" "I didn't cook for her." Yang Yi was telling the truth. "But you've already brought her to your home. You even gave her clothes to wear." Murphy's grievance exploded. She felt that if she didn't say it out, she would die of suffocation. She, who was eating fruit at the side, thought that her mother was unhappy because of the clothes. She quickly took her mother's hand and comforted her. "Mom, don't be angry. Xiao Kai's mom returned Papa's clothes." But how could Murphy be angry because of a piece of clothes? She stubbornly looked at Yang Yi, wanting Yang Yi to give her an explanation. But Yang Yi felt that there was nothing to explain, and said lightly, her feet were dirty, and there was no place to wash in the bathroom downstairs. So she came upstairs to use the bathroom. Of course, this explanation was not enough. Murphy turned her head and argued with Yang Yi. Yang Yi had never dealt with this kind of emotional problem, so he didn't know what to do. On the other hand, she stepped on the chair, raised her butt, and leaned on the table to eat fruit. She unintentionally muttered, "But Xiao Kai doesn't like to play with Shi, so he doesn't come." Murphy pricked up her ears. This was something that Murphy hadn't heard before. Yang Yi also nodded and said with a smile, "Maybe his mother doesn't have time. She has to manage her family's flower shop, and your Xiao Kai has to learn piano." After the day he returned the clothes, he didn't come again. Hearing this, Murphy felt as if a stone had been lifted from her heart, but she still couldn't help but ask, "He didn't come again?" "Well, I also wanted to say that she can have one more good friend, but it's a pity." Yang Yi shook his head. Murphy pursed her lips and said, "You still want to have contact with that woman?" "It's not her. I just think that if she can have one more playmate, she won't be too lonely." Yang Yi said, "But it doesn't matter. Now there are many teachers' children in the school, and they often play on the lawn in front of the economic management building. Next evening, you can consider taking Shi to meet other children." It turned out that they had only met twice. Murphy's mood suddenly brightened. She was so happy that she didn't pay attention to Yang Yi's words. Her appetite was also better, and she fought with Shi to eat the fruit salad. However, there was still a problem. "What about the clothes you put on her that day?" Murphy pretended to be indifferent and asked. Yang Yi was puzzled. "What do you want to do?" "I want to wear it too. I rushed back today, and I'm wearing these clothes. It's so hot." Murphy said stubbornly. "Then I'll get you a new one, or I'll take you to buy clothes." "Are you sure you want to wear men's clothes?" Yang Yi said with a headache. "No, I want to wear it, and I want to wear that one." Murphy pouted and said, "But I threw it away." Yang Yi said honestly, "Threw it away? Why?" Murphy didn't believe him. "Because I don't like to wear clothes that others have worn before." Yang Yi said concisely. Murphy still didn't believe him, but Yang Yi really said the truth. He was such a clean freak. How could he wear clothes that others have worn before? The day Yin Xiaopei returned the clothes, Yang Yi turned his head and threw it into the trash can. "I'll take you to buy clothes." "I don't want to." "Then I'll get you a new one." No, I'm not hot anymore, and the clothes I'm wearing now are very comfortable." Chapter 66. After the misunderstanding was cleared up, Murphy did not mention anything about bringing Shi back. However, she did not stay with Yang Yi for long. Not long after, Murphy received a call from Sister Ling. Sister Ling was so angry that her voice trembled as she scolded Murphy. "Do you think you can squander your talent just because you have talent? Do you think you can come and go as you please in this entertainment industry? Look at your current results. Wake up. You're no longer the queen of music from 4 or 5 years ago. If you don't work hard, you'll really be suppressed by those newcomers. You'll never be able to make a comeback. Do you know who you've offended by quitting this program? Just Lu Shifeng alone can make you so miserable. What's more, this time it's Shanghai TV station. After offending Shanghai TV station, do you still want to stay in the entertainment industry in the future? I don't care what happened to you, Murphy. I don't care where you are now. Hurry up and go back to record the program. I've already told Mo Xiaowan not to tell the TV station. Hurry up and go back now. Otherwise, Murphy, don't come to see me." Sister Ling was really angry this time. Murphy was scolded to the point that she did not have a chance to explain. Her mood, which had just cleared up, was now clouded over again. Yang Yi heard the commotion and roughly understood the situation. He frowned and asked, "You left your job and came back?" Murphy nodded her head in grievance and did not say a word. Yang Yi didn't really care if he worked or not. It was just like opening a shop. He could choose to keep it open all day, or he could close the door at will and accompany his daughter, or go out for a stroll. However, this job seemed to be very important to Murphy. After Yang Yi learned to think for others, he understood this point. Murphy cared so much about her records. If she lost her job, there might be a big problem. Does it affect you a lot? Yang Yi asked. Murphy nodded silently. Let's go back now, Yang Yi said. Shishi, don't worry. I'll take good care of her for you. How can I make it back in time? The show starts recording at 8 o'clock, and it's almost 4 o'clock now. How can I make it back to Shanghai? Murphy said. I still have to find my driver. I don't know how long that will take. Of course, the fastest way was to take a plane. However, when taking a plane, one still had to consider the flight schedule. The time spent in the middle was not necessarily less than driving. After all, Magic City and Rivertown were near each other. Yang Yi stood up with a bang. He picked up the key and said, There are still 4 hours left. It was more than enough. Come, I'll drive you to Shanghai. I want to go too. She wants to go too. The little girl was playing with her toys, and her ears were like automatic alarms. When she heard the keywords, she jumped up happily and ran over. Of course Shishi is going too. Yang Yi smiled and rubbed the little girl's head. Daddy doesn't dare to leave you alone at home. We can't make it back in time. Murphy was very doubtful. However, Yang Yi took her hand, pulled her downstairs and stuffed her into the car. Although the process was very short, Murphy's ears were red. This seemed to be the first time they held hands, right? This time, Yang Yi placed Shishi and Murphy in the back seat. For this arrangement, he also removed the safety seat and reinstalled it in the back. Then he firmly fastened Shishi with the seat belt. I want to sit in the front and enjoy the scenery, the little girl said with a pout. However, Yang Yi did not pay attention to her. After he finished all this, he did not forget to remind Murphy, fasten the seat belt. The back seat also needs to be fastened? Murphy did not understand, but she still obeyed. Soon Murphy understood why Yang Yi said so. This guy was already very familiar with the roads in Jiangcheng. After a few turns, he directly went on the Ring Highway. He was ready to bypass the bustling city area and take the Jianghu Expressway to Shanghai. After getting on the highway, Yang Yi began to speed up. 100, 120. The speed was close to the limit of the highway. If it were not for Shishi and Murphy sitting in the back seat, for safety reasons and out of consideration for their acceptance, Yang Yi could have directly sped up to 200 kilometers per hour. Slow down, slow down. Murphy was a little nervous, especially when she saw Yang Yi overtaking without slowing down. She was so nervous that her hands were sweating. Ha ha ha. It's so fun. However, Shishi showed a different reaction. The little girl waved her little hands and was excited by the feeling of being driven at lightning speed. Close your eyes and sleep. There's a quilt behind you, Yang Yi said without turning his head. Rest your mind. You still have to record the show tonight. So fierce, Murphy muttered in her heart. She wrinkled her nose and made a face at Yang Yi's back. Then she obediently hugged the quilt and went to sleep. She was really tired. She did not sleep for many hours yesterday. When she got up early in the morning, she suffered a blow from the Waterloo sails. Then, she was worried about Shishi's sudden disappearance. Later, on the way back to Jiangcheng, she was not in the mood to close her eyes and rest. Her mind was full of all kinds of ties with Yang Yi. Fortunately, she got the answer she wanted. Then it felt so good to be cared for like this. In this kind of sweetness that she had never felt before, Murphy gradually fell asleep. Actually, she did not sleep well in the car. Yang Yi's tyrant was good in everything, but the shock absorption was a little bad. She did not know if it was because the military car did not consider shock absorption at all in the past. Murphy was in a daze as she swayed, but she could still hear the conversation between Yang Yi and Shishi clearly. Wow, Papa, look there are so many boats. Because we're crossing the river. Papa, those cars can't catch up with us. I'm so happy. Then, Papa is driving so fast. Are you afraid? I'm not afraid. Shishi is not a child anymore. Haha, who told you that you're not a child? Mom said it. Mom said that she has grown up. She has to be good and not disturb Papa. Okay, don't listen to your mother's nonsense. In the future, when you're not at Papa's house, call me if you miss me, okay? Okay. Papa, can you open the window? Why? Because the window is covered, I can't see clearly. Not now. Why? Because your mother is sleeping. She, you have to be quiet. Don't disturb your mother. It's very hard on her. Okay, shoo. Unknowingly, the car stopped. Murphy, we're here. Yang Yi turned his head and shook Murphy awake. Murphy woke up in a daze and saw the Shanghai TV station not far away. She murmured, "Ah, we're here so soon? What time is it?" "It's still early. Fortunately, we didn't disappoint you. We're almost an hour early." Yang Yi smiled slightly. Along the way, Yang Yi drove like a speeding car. In 3 hours, he drove nearly 300 kilometers and overtook all the cars in Shanghai. He was lucky that no traffic police stopped him. Murphy didn't rush to get out of the car. She called Mo Xiaowan first. "Sister, you're back?" When Mo Xiaowan saw Murphy, she almost cried with joy. However, when she saw Yang Yi in the car, she was shocked and looked at Yang Yi and Murphy with a strange expression. "Do you want me to wait for you?" Yang Yi ignored her and said to Murphy. Murphy gently shook her head and said in an unusually soft voice, "No, you can go back first or take Shishi to play in Shanghai for a day or two. I'm in a hurry. After recording the show, I have to catch a plane to Beijing." Mo Xiaowan nodded and added, "Yes, I've already booked the plane tickets." "Okay, then I'll take Shishi back first after dinner. It's still early." Yang Yi didn't mind. Hee, we're going for a ride again." Shishi was addicted to sitting in the car and shouted happily. "No," Murphy said unhappily. "You're not in a hurry. You're not allowed to drive so fast. Safety first." Mo Xiaowan looked at their faces with a strange expression. A bunch of gossip was brewing in her heart. What happened to them today? Why did they suddenly get better? No, she had to ask them clearly later. Chapter 67. Before they knew it, Drawing Sword had been updated for a week. Although Yang Yi updated once a day, the speed was much slower than the previous Soldier's Assault, which caused the readers to complain wildly. Even so, they continued to complain while reading in a daze. However, after the 7th chapter was released yesterday, Yang Yi aroused public anger. F***ck, did he really write sister-in-law Xiuqin to death? Great author, do you have a conscience? The first 7 chapters of the novel killed the female lead. It's over. A good book turned into poisonous grass, the extremely poisonous kind. Abandon the book. F***ck, I'm so angry. A good female lead was killed by a cannon. Can't you save her? In fact, these were really the curses of true fans who expected better from Yang Yi. At present, Yang Yi had gathered the power of fans and many paid posters dared not come forward. There were also emotional people who said, "Although I had a hunch after seeing Xiuqin get caught, I can't believe that you, the author, would do such a thing. It took me a whole day to get this chapter out. Even a 1.8-meter-tall man like me is crying. It's so uncomfortable. Didn't the monk kneel down and beg you to give him 10 minutes? If he rushed in with his men, he might have been able to save her. Bastard, why didn't you give Xiuqin a chance to live?" Li Yunlong did the right thing. As a soldier, he can't let go of the Japanese special forces because of his love. He can't forget to avenge his brothers who died on the mountain because of his love. That's why he ordered the cannon to fire. I respect him as a man and a qualified general. Finally, someone stood up and said something fair for Yang Yi. Li Yunlong sat down weakly. His mind went blank, and he felt weak all over. This sentence made me cry. Since she's the woman you love so much, why can't you save her? Li Yunlong, you're a coward. It had to be said that this chapter was indeed poisonous. More than 90% of the readers found it hard to accept this fact, especially the original readers of the Chinese website. These web novel readers scolded Yang Yi even more fiercely. Even the hardcore fan Mu Yuqing couldn't help but ridicule Yang Yi. You bastard, are all the female protagonists in your works worthless? Soldier doesn't have a female lead. and Drawing Sword's female lead has only appeared for a few chapters. They've just gotten married, and you're already letting her get a bento? After all, everyone was used to the plot of web novels. No matter how the main character started, whether it was Zhao Ritian or an ordinary mortal, he could become an omnipotent Superman in the end. Regardless of whether there was one, two, or many female leads, the male lead would be able to take care of them all, and then start a huge harem. If someone dared to write that the male lead was incompetent, and caused the female lead to suffer even the slightest bit of harm, the male chauvinistic readers would scold that person to death. However, Yang Yi did just that. Not only did he hurt the female lead, but he also made the male lead ruthlessly blast his own woman, and the Japanese to death with a cannon. Was he not courting death? Was he not trying to poison his own readers? Was he not trying to drive his readers away? The editors of the Iron Army website, who had been paying close attention to Drawing Sword's developments, were delighted to see this scene. After all, the release of Drawing Sword had indeed caused a great crisis for them. Hu Da's move was ingenious, and it happened to be right at their throats. It was not some underhanded conspiracy. He was clearly trying to pit Yang Yi's book against the Iron Army website. He was blatantly attracting the readers of the Iron Army website, and the Iron Army website could do nothing about it. Now the old readers of the Iron Army website were in such a situation. They chose to read Yang Yi's book at Chiyue, and then spent money to reward him. However, they would continue to read at the Iron Army website. The only difference was that their consumption had been greatly reduced. This could be seen from the back-end data. Although the Iron Army website believed in its own foundation and appeal, and believed that the readers would not abandon the Iron Army website, the income that originally belonged to them was divided up by Chiyue. No one would be willing to accept that. But what could they do about it? The editors of the Iron Army website had thought of poaching Yang Yi. During the serialization of Soldier's Assault, a large number of Iron Army readers left messages asking them to poach Yang Yi. They had seriously considered this issue. Poaching Yang Yi was obviously beneficial. But Chiyue had done a good job of keeping it a secret, at least from their point of view. The author's information was not leaked at all, and the author himself did not interact with the book fans in the book review section. Actually, if Chiyue knew about this, they would definitely cry foul. After they signed a long-term contract with Yang Yi, not only did they not intend to hide it, they even wanted to publicize it and make Yang Yi a new great author. However, Yang Yi refused. Not only did he not want them to expose his personal information, but he was also not interested in participating in a written interview on the website. This greatly disappointed the staff of the publicity department of Chiyue, and the readers kept calling for him. But they did not get a response. Of course, there was another way, and that was to get Yang Yi's contact information from the Copyright Association, but this would undoubtedly require a lot of favors. The management staff of the website did not have the ability to do so, unless they begged the Army Journal behind it. However, the bosses of the Iron Army website felt that it was making a mountain out of a molehill, so they gave up on this idea. But how were they going to poach him? Waving Ho Sigu was at a loss. They could only watch as Drawing Sword's results exploded, but there was nothing they could do. Of course, now that Drawing Sword had dug a hole for itself, the editorial department of the Iron Army website was cheering and celebrating with smiles on their faces. However, it seemed that this celebration came too early. After the 8th and 9th chapters were released one after another, the editors of the Iron Army website were surprised to find that the readers who were originally clamoring to abandon the book did not abandon the book. Instead, they were cursing and subscribing to the new chapters. Of course, the new 2 chapters caused a great deal of controversy. Yang Yi, that guy, wrote the death of the monk after the death of the heroine. Although the monk was only a supporting character, and was only Li Yunlong's bodyguard, his powerful martial arts and righteous character had earned him a lot of fans. But how could such a character of flesh and blood die in vain? Moreover, he did not die at the hands of the ferocious Japanese, but at the hands of bandits, Chinese. The hearts of the readers were bleeding. They did not blame Li Yunlong. Li Yunlong had done well enough. Not only did he disregard discipline and lead his men to eliminate the bandits to avenge the monk, but he also committed the highly controversial killing of prisoners. The readers still loved Li Yunlong to the core, but they also hated Yang Yi to the core. How could he write the monk's death? Chapter 68. Although the book review section was filled with criticism, what made the editors of Iron Military uncomfortable was that the results of Drawing Sword were increasing instead of decreasing. The more it was criticized, the more popular its sales were. Boss, did Chiyu do something to it? A new editor said indignantly. A group of people said they were going to abandon the book, so why are there still so many people subscribing? This doesn't make sense. The deputy editor of Iron Military, Ling Yunjuejian, was indeed a balding middle-aged man. He pushed his gold-rimmed glasses up and did not say a word. However, the chief editor next to him was already speaking up for him. Fishball, what nonsense are you talking about? How can Chiyu tamper with this kind of big data? Don't tell me they're directly giving money to fill the number of subscriptions? Of course, that was impossible. The fiercer the criticism, the more you can see the reader's fondness for Drawing Sword. Ling Yunjuejian sighed and said, "It's just like those tragic dramas. The more people cry, the more the market." He took the mouse and clicked on the reward section. He pointed to the projection and said to his subordinates, "Look, he wrote the supporting characters to death, but there are still many people who are willing to support him. They're even willing to spend a lot of money to get him to revise the previous chapters." The most extravagant was the Golden Alliance of Drawing Sword. A reader with the ID, military number urges me to report, spent a huge reward of 50 million book coins, equivalent to 500,000 yuan, just to leave a message in red. There's still 50 million left. Yang Yi, if you change Xiuqin and the monk back, it's yours. If you don't change it, I'll send 100 teddy bears to your house one day. P.S. The joke about sending teddy bears came from the book review section. A book friend said that if Little Frost gets this book, he'll send Tyree Tian to Little Frost. Doraemon is scared. The editors of Iron Military were no strangers to this idea. They knew that this person's true identity was a real estate owner who used to be a soldier. After retiring, he started from scratch and was a big boss who was worth hundreds of millions. In the past, he spent no less than 5 million on Iron Military. He was a big fish that even Iron Military had to take care of carefully. However, now that he had gone to another platform and was still tipping the authors of the other platform, the editors of the Iron Army Network were heartbroken. "I think it's better if we poach Yang Yi over at all costs." The meeting room was silent for a while. Then one of the chief editors said, "What kind of conditions did Chiyu offer him? We'll give him something better and give him a signing fee." "But the problem is, we don't even know where they are. How are we going to poach them?" Another chief editor retorted. "If we could, we would have done so long ago." "Ling Yun, why don't we discuss this with the military's literature department?" "That's right. With the help of the Army's literature and arts department, wouldn't everything be fine by now?" Ling Yun frowned as he listened to the commotion in the conference room. He laughed bitterly in his heart. Too naive. Was it so easy to order those people in the army? Moreover, the relationship between the Iron Military and the Army's literature and arts department had been strained recently. Due to the decline of traditional media, the Army's literature and arts department had been declining year by year. On the other hand, the Iron Military had shown great potential for growth. This made Ling Yun a little unhappy. Every time the leaders of both sides met for a meeting, there would be a smell of gunpowder. Ahem, I think we don't have to go through the Army's literature and arts department. A weak voice entered Ling Yun's ears. Ling Yun's eyes lit up. He pointed at the guy and said, "Fishball, what good idea do you have? Hurry up and tell me." That's right, it was the brash new editor. When he saw that the deputy chief editor had called him out, he mustered up his courage and stood up. He said loudly, "We can ask a good publisher to talk to Chiyu about the physical publication of Soldier's Assault. For such an important matter, Chiyu would definitely give us the author's information, right? As long as we can get in touch with the author, our chance will come." "That's right." Ling Yun patted his bald head and laughed. "Fishball, that's a good idea. Very good, very good. Let's do it this way." You go and make the arrangements. Yang Yi had no idea what the editors of the Iron Military Com were up to. Yang Yi had been informed by the editor, Chang Zi, about his new book, but he did not look at the reviews and comments section. He also had no intention of changing the manuscript. Yes, a reward of $500,000 was not enough to change the plot of the original novel. Why? Yang Yi's reward for a mission in his previous life was a few $1,000,000. How could a mere $500,000 be enough to make him go away? Furthermore, no amount of money would work. Yang Yi was a man of principles. But what was he doing? Today Yang Yi did not open his shop. Instead, he brought Shishi to the bank. Of course, Yang Yi did not have the attributes of Detective Conan. He was just there to withdraw money. The bank was peaceful. There were no bank robberies or kidnappings. As they had made an appointment beforehand, the VIP manager brought Yang Yi and Shishi to a separate VIP room. She was very considerate and gave Shishi a plate of candies and biscuits. "Thank you, Auntie," Shishi said sweetly as she snuggled into her father's arms. "You have to call me sister. Calling me Auntie is too old." The VIP manager, who was wearing a suit and a skirt, was actually only a few years younger than Yang Yi. However, it was a woman's nature to dislike being called Auntie. Back to the topic, the VIP manager confirmed with Yang Yi. "Mr. Yang Yi, are you going to withdraw $1 million in cash?" "That's right." Yang Yi nodded. "But it's not convenient to carry $1 million in cash around. It's also not safe." Sure enough, Tianxia Bank was just as evil. She tried her best to persuade him to stay. "Why don't you deposit your money in the bank? We have a very convenient wealth management product here. Your money can be withdrawn as soon as you deposit it. The interest rate is higher than a current account, and the income is calculated daily." Yang Yi was very firm. He waited for the VIP manager to catch her breath and expressed his attitude. "No, I want to withdraw cash." The VIP manager tried her best, but Yang Yi still wanted to withdraw the money. In the end, she could only ask the security guard to send the money up. Yang Yi prepared his own luggage to withdraw the money. Seeing Yang Yi put the stacks of money into the bag, the VIP manager's heart was bleeding. She could not help but say, "Mr. Yang, it's not safe to carry so much money on the road." Yang Yi smiled faintly. He looked at her calmly and said, "Is it? Thank you for your reminder. Let's go, Shishi." The little girl reluctantly looked at the untouched candy on the plate, but she still obediently jumped down from the chair and ran over to her father's empty left hand. "Goodbye, Auntie," Shishi said obediently. The VIP manager's mouth twitched when she heard that. She could only force a smile. Just like how he didn't care when he bought a car with $2 million. Yang Yi carried the bag of money and calmly walked out with Shishi. It was as if they were a father and daughter traveling with their luggage. No one would look at him. Yang Yi was still looking forward to it, but there were no blind robbers rushing out. So he threw the money into the back seat of Tyrannical Wolf and left with Shishi. Chapter 69. Modified version. When he got home, Yang Yi waited for Shishi to go to bed before he took the money in the 2 luggage bags to the study. The money that Yang Yi had withdrawn from the bank that day was in the gray luggage bag. It was his income from the book Soldier's Assault, last month. The other dark green duffel bag contained the reward he received for reporting the corrupt official. Of course, it was no longer $2 million. Yang Yi had bought the car, renovated the coffee shop, and other expenses. He had spent more than $800,000, close to $900,000. That was quite a lot. Luckily, Yang Yi easily got it back. He opened the dark green luggage bag and took out the scattered money. Then he took out the money from the gray luggage bag and placed it neatly into the dark green luggage bag. He counted until the money in the dark green luggage bag reached $2 million. There was still $122,700 left in the gray luggage bag. Yang Yi took it out and placed it neatly in the drawer in his study for his daily use. Yang Yi liked to keep a large amount of cash at home. On one hand, it was because the concept of mobile payment didn't exist in this world. On the other hand, it was because of his habit from his previous life. He could take the money and run away anytime. Even though he didn't need to do that now, Yang Yi still lacked a sense of security. Speaking of which, After Yang Yi tidied up the dark green luggage bag, he finally let out a sigh of relief. Back then, when he took the 2 million from the corrupt official Luo Jinrong's vault, Yang Yi thought that he could take it with a clear conscience, just like in his previous life, and leave with his reward. However, under Mo Fei's interrogation, Yang Yi found that although he had deceived her by making up a lie, there was a heavy shackle on his heart. It turned out that there were so many restrictions in the world of ordinary people. Yang Yi gradually distinguished the conflict between his previous life and his current life. Take the reward for example. Yang Yi might have thought of it as a reward for his efforts, but to ordinary people, the money was ill-gotten wealth. How could the corrupt officials take the wealth of the people and use it for themselves? Carrying out justice on behalf of the heavens, and you still want to steal while you're at it? Then what right do you have to say that you're walking on the path of justice? If he had even deceived his own daughter's mother, how could he use this money with a clear conscience? Since he had decided to completely integrate into the world of ordinary people, Yang Yi was also slowly changing his mindset. Although it was impossible for Murphy to discover the existence of the money, Yang Yi felt that if he didn't handle it properly, there would always be a demon in his heart. How could this be? Yang Yi wanted to live a carefree life. Therefore, after he received the copyright income last month, Yang Yi took back the money that really belonged to him, and made up for the hole that he originally took out. The only thing left was how to deal with the 2 million. Fortunately, Yang Yi already had a plan. After 2 weeks of hitting the charts with her new song, Murphy could finally come back and rest for a few days. Although these few days weren't completely a rest, she still had to participate in some programs in Jiangcheng. Murphy still wanted Yang Yi to send Shishi home. She missed her daughter. When Yang Yi saw Murphy, she still looked cold, but in front of Yang Yi, she didn't hide it. Her eyes were still full of fatigue and loneliness. I saw it in the newspaper. Yang Yi hesitated and said, "The situation of your new album isn't very good." Murphy was hugging Shishi. The mother and daughter were interacting intimately. When she heard Yang Yi's words, Murphy pursed her lips and said stiffly, "Let's not talk about this." Although her relationship with Yang Yi had eased, Murphy's understanding of Yang Yi was still in the past. She felt that Yang Yi was still very dissatisfied with her work in the entertainment industry. Therefore, if she could avoid talking about this with Yang Yi, she didn't want to talk about it. What's more, Murphy had been beaten black and blue by the poor sales of her album in the past 2 weeks. Home seemed to be her only safe haven. Why would she involve those troubles? Murphy's tone was still very uncomfortable, but Yang Yi was still not angry. He still felt that Murphy's situation was very bad, but the problem wasn't with Murphy herself. It was just that the songs in her new album were too bad. If he were to write songs for Murphy with Murphy's ability, it wouldn't be impossible for her to return to the top. What's more, he could sell songs to an unfamiliar singer like Chen Yijie. How could he just stand by and watch Murphy be depressed? She is Shishi's mother. Yang Yi muttered to himself for a moment and said, "I think that I might be able to help you." Murphy was a little unhappy. She interrupted Yang Yi and said irritably, "No need. You stay at home and take care of Shishi. Let me deal with the problems in my career, okay?" Choking for a moment, Yang Yi swallowed back the words of wanting to help her write a song. Seriously, a dog biting Lu Dongbin, she doesn't know how to appreciate kindness. Yang Yi was also a guy with strong self-esteem. He didn't want to shamelessly stick to other people's cold buttocks. Murphy looked at Yang Yi and didn't say anything. She was actually a little flustered in her heart. Of course, Murphy didn't know what she missed out on, but she didn't know why. But she inexplicably cared about Yang Yi's feelings. Would he be angry? Sigh, did I lose my temper again just now? Mo Fei started to blame herself. However, even so, with her cold personality, it was difficult for her to take the initiative to apologize to Yang Yi. Murphy's idea was also very strange. If he wasn't willing to give in on the issue that she insisted on, then she could just compensate him in other areas. The two of them seemed to have parted on bad terms this time. After sending Shishi to Murphy's place, Yang Yi could be said to have a few days of vacation. He followed his plan and threw the dark green luggage bag into the car. Then he took some simple clothes and drove all the way west to a relatively poor western province. You are Zhu Luyan? Yang Yi met with the person he contacted earlier. Zhu Luyan, this was the founder of a non-governmental charity organization. Although he looked dark and thin and dressed like a migrant worker, Yang Yi still knew that this guy's background wasn't small. He was born in a big family in the capital, a rich family. But because Zhu Luyan's relationship was strongly interfered with by his family, he angrily left the capital and left his original pride and status. Of course, Zhu Luyan still hoped to make some achievements to prove himself, so he chose to do charity with his girlfriend. Moreover, he was very creative and established a project called Dream Primary School. Through donations, they were dedicated to building well-equipped schools in poor areas to help those children realize their dreams. Of course, they had only built 3 schools so far. After all, the donations weren't much. Most of the money came from Zhu Luyan selling his luxury car. He wasn't willing to use his family's connections to trick others into donating money. Before this, Yang Yi had done a detailed investigation, and even borrowed the dark power of this world. Therefore, he was still very assured about Zhu Luyan's project. It just so happened that his 2 million yuan could be used appropriately, and Yang Yi didn't have to worry too much. After Zhu Luyan and Yang Yi confirmed each other's identity, he carried the dark green luggage bag that Yang Yi gave him. He was so excited that he trembled a little. He said, "Mr. Yang Yi, your 2 million yuan is really timely. Moreover, we can let 2 more children in poor areas have a place to study." Zhu Luyan's excitement, of course, wasn't because he had never seen so much money before, but because it was the first time he received such a large donation. Moreover, it came at such a timely time, so he didn't need to ask his family for help. He regained the confidence to do a good job in charity. Yang Yi smiled slightly and said, "Mr. Zhu, I have a question, but I don't know if I should ask." "Go ahead. I'm just suggesting a little. The name of your project, Dream Primary School, sounds weird. Would it be better to call it Hope Primary School?" Chapter 70. In the blink of an eye, it was July. Zhu Luyan seemed to have found a like-minded comrade. She took him to visit the schools he had built before and asked him to give his opinion. Yang Yi came back a little late. There was no problem with Murphy. They parted on bad terms that day, but it didn't affect their conversation every night. The content of this call was a little strange. The two of them didn't talk about their relationship, nor did they talk about love. They just talked about Cece day after day. If Shishi was with Yang Yi, Murphy would ask Yang Yi to report the interesting things about her daughter that day. If Shishi went back to live with her mother, Murphy would also tell Yang Yi about Shishi. This kind of talk on the phone was really magical, but what was more magical was that Yang Yi enjoyed the process. After hanging up the phone, Murphy would secretly feel sweet for a while, as if Yang Yi had said something sweet. Of course not. How could a wooden person like Yang Yi say something sweet? When Yang Yi came back, the editor, Chang Zi, was the happiest. "My lord, you are finally back." Chang Zi received Yang Yi's reply on SNS and almost cried with joy. Yang Yi was a little puzzled. "I stopped updating?" "No, there are still some manuscripts in the draft box." "Then my readers fell out again." "Well, there are some." After the new heroine appeared, the readers were a little angry, but the situation is still manageable. This matter started last week. Under the joint counterattack of the 2 military forces in China and some small warlords, the Japanese invaders were finally defeated. They were even driven out of the country and chased back to their home island. In the end, the Japanese invaders surrendered unconditionally. This history was somewhat similar to Yang Yi's previous life, but it was more about the pride of the Chinese army, and the European and American armies didn't get involved. After the victory, it was bound to be the beginning of the Civil War. In the joint battle, the strength of the small warlords was almost exhausted, and the rest was the confrontation between the 2 military forces. In fact, history had changed a lot, but it was surprisingly similar. After Yang Yi made some artistic modifications, the trajectory of the story returned to the original plot. Li Yunlong's military force, which was based on workers and farmers, and Chu Yunfei's military force, which was backed by entrepreneurs and bankers, began to fight in the vast land of China. Li Yunlong's name was unknown, but he showed cunning and tenacious fighting power, which gave his opponents a headache. Just like his military force, although it looked very primitive, it was strong enough to make all the people who looked down on it slap themselves in the face. But fate was so strange. Li Yunlong and Chu Yunfei, these two people who appreciated each other, but had to be wary of each other, met again. Once they were both regimental commanders. Because of his temper, Li Yunlong killed prisoners, disobeyed orders, got promoted, got demoted, and stayed in the position of regimental commander, even though the army he led was already an independent brigade, and during the battle, it was expanded to a division. In the original novel, Li Yunlong was promoted to a division commander, but the title of regimental commander was still deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. Chu Yunfei was much better. He was talented, and he was more tactful than Li Yunlong. Naturally, he had a meteoric rise, and he had already reached the rank of Major General. Of course, they also led a division. The two characters that the readers loved so much were destined to have a battle of life and death. But how could they guess Yang Yi's plan? At the end of the 12th chapter, Chu Yunfei ordered his subordinates to shoot at Li Yunlong, and Li Yunlong also ordered his machine gunners to shoot at Chu Yunfei. At that time, the readers' hearts were broken. Fortunately, in the end, Li Yunlong was pulled back from the edge of death by the hospital. He was wrapped like a dumpling, and he was in a coma for 8 days before he woke up. The overjoyed readers seemed to empathize with Li Yunlong's subordinates. Listen, if anything happens to our division commander, I'll kill you first, and then the doctor. Do you understand? There would always be a delicate girl next to a reckless man. This time, when Li Yunlong was injured, a little nurse, Tianyu, appeared next to him. She looked like she came out of a painting. When Zhao Gang, the literary political commissar, saw her, he thought of the poem, Hibiscus like a face, willow like eyebrows in the Song of Everlasting Regret. It could be seen how delicate her beauty was. But the readers didn't accept her because she was beautiful. It was amazing. Originally, in the world of online novels, the male version was basically the world of male chauvinists. Most readers couldn't wait for the male protagonist to have all the beautiful women in his pocket. But in this book, there was a call to not welcome Tianyu's character in the book review section. It was almost a one-sided rejection. Perhaps it was because Xiuqin was too deeply rooted in people's hearts. Shouldn't the strong woman who was still stubborn and willing to sacrifice for her man be the perfect match for a man like Li Yunlong? Why did another vixen get into his mind so quickly, after his wife died? Of course, the plot in the book actually jumped a long time. The readers saw this development in a few days and didn't realize that in fact, Xiuqin had been gone for many years. In the next few chapters, the attitude of the readers quietly changed. Because of each other, the two characters who seemed to be completely incompatible with each other had a chemical change that made the readers unhappy, but couldn't help but laugh. Tianyu, who was originally from a scholarly family, had a chivalrous heart. Not only did she carefully take care of Li Yunlong, but she also had a deep understanding of him. She could also understand Li Yunlong's past. She even tried to argue with her colleagues about the fact that Li Yunlong killed his wife with the Japanese. And Li Yunlong also changed from a rough man to a rough man with a playful heart. He tried his best to recite poems with Tianyu. He was also angry that the hospital changed the nurse for him, so he played petty tricks and asked Tianyu to transfer him back. This kind of disparity gradually made people feel that the two of them were actually quite compatible. Finally, Li Yunlong went to the Tian family's house to propose. Although there were still some readers who were unconvinced, most of them had already accepted the arrangement of the story. No, it seemed that they had gone a little too far. Back to the conversation between Yang Yi and Chang Zi. Yang Yi asked in confusion, "Then what are you in such a hurry for?" Chang Zi quickly said, "There's a problem with the physical publication of Soldier Assault. Didn't your contract say that you have to be involved to talk about the copyright? Now several publishers have come to your door, and there's even someone who wants to sign 2 of your books in one go." Well, he did have some foresight after all. Drawing Sword was not even halfway through its serialization, yet he could already see the potential of Drawing Sword. Of course, Chiyu wanted to strike while the iron was hot and fight for more benefits, but Yang Yi wasn't there at all. "I understand." Yang Yi pondered for a moment and said, Ask them to come over to my place to talk. Let's do it next week. I'll basically be in the shop next week. Okay, I'll arrange it right away. My colleagues from Chiyu's copyright department will also accompany you. Changzi responded quickly. The happy Changzi certainly did not see it through the screen. Yang Yi's lips also curled into a slightly deep smile. Chapter 71. Shishi, wake up. It's time for breakfast. Auntie Zhu was the nanny who woke Shishi up this morning. Shishi rubbed her eyes and leaned on Auntie Zhu's shoulder. She hadn't woken up yet. The little girl's voice was also drowsy as she asked, "Where's Mom?" "I want Mom." Mom went to work. But Mom said that Shishi has to stay at home obediently." Auntie Zhu was already used to it and comforted her skillfully. "Shishi doesn't want to be obedient. Shishi wants Mom." Shishi mumbled. Of course, Shishi was just venting a little when she woke up. She was already used to her mother not being by her side, so she was very obedient and didn't cry or cause trouble for Auntie Zhu. Auntie Zhu was quite responsible for taking care of Shishi, washing her face, and taking care of Shishi's breakfast. However, she couldn't be as meticulous as a real parent. When she was feeding Shishi porridge, she still turned on the TV and focused on it. "I want to eat sandwiches and drink juice." Shishi grabbed her little feet and protested. The little girl was unbridled when Murphy wasn't by her side. Usually, Shishi was focused on cultivating Murphy into a little lady. She wouldn't allow Shishi to play with her feet with her hands. Dad seemed to allow it, but Yang Yi would definitely ask Shishi to wash her hands. "Auntie will buy you sandwiches tomorrow. There's juice in the fridge. Drink it after you finish the porridge." Auntie Zhu stuffed another spoonful of porridge into her mouth. Shishi's mouth was stuffed with porridge. She swallowed it uncomfortably before she had the chance to continue speaking. "No, I want to eat the delicious sandwiches that Dad makes and drink juice made from oranges." "You still have to eat well." Auntie Zhu didn't care. She continued watching the TV and said, "You have to eat well to eat a lot of delicious food." What kind of logic was this? Shishi couldn't understand. When she was at her father's place, sandwiches were rice. Moreover, when they were eating together, her father would make a lot of delicious food. The picky little girl felt that she had no appetite for the food she ate at home. However, before Shishi could throw a tantrum and protest, Aunt Zhu suddenly said, "Shishi, look, it's your mother." Shishi's attention was immediately attracted. She widened her eyes and focused on the television because her mother really did appear on the television. Last month, the former pop queen Murphy came back and released her new album, 9 Years of Murphy. However, the current market performance is relatively low. Some experts have analyzed that the reason for Murphy's predicament is that the quality of her works has greatly decreased after her comeback, which is really disappointing. The video shown on TV was a clip of Mo Fei's participation in a music program. However, this news was still connected to the so-called expert and music critic. That person said, "A month ago, I had already expected that the results of Mo Fei's new album would not be much better. Why? First, her new album was too rushed. From the news of her comeback to the announcement of her new album, only a few months have passed. Any outstanding album needs the singer to carefully polish it. If the album is not made with effort, how can it sell well? Here, I have to mention Lee Man. Now, Lee Man's status in the music industry is not lower than Murphy's before she retired. However, Lee Man still spent a long time perfecting her music. I believe that the new album that she promised to release in January next year will definitely sell well. As I said earlier, this is only one of the reasons. There is another reason. It's just that I don't think Mo Fei's character is good. Previously, teacher Lu Shifeng openly criticized her on the show. Later, many musicians in the industry also expressed a lot of opinions. Of course, they didn't make it public. The reason why I know is that I'm familiar with them. Her character is not good, and she has offended many people. Murphy wants to easily return to the peak after her comeback. How is this possible? If she can still become popular, wouldn't it be unfair to other hardworking children, such as Lee Man? This guy said a lot, but he always had a feeling that he was stepping on Murphy and flattering Lee Man. In fact, he received money from Lee Man. Only a small TV station that Aunt Ju liked to watch every day would invite such a person to spout nonsense. Aunt Ju, of course, still stood on Murphy's side. She said angrily, "This person is talking nonsense. When did your mother not work hard? I feel distressed. She is such a good daughter. She practices singing every day and works hard. How can you say that she is not hardworking?" She was actually confused when she heard that person's words. As a child, how could she understand so many words? At most, she felt that this person was not saying anything good. But after listening to Aunt Ju, the little girl said angrily, "My mom is not hardworking. Mom is very powerful." She seemed to equate hardworking with being powerful. Sigh. Aunt Ju sighed. "But your mother is in a bad situation now. The news said that she released a new album, but the results are very bad. Mom won't." She was stunned. She felt a little wronged. She rubbed her eyes and refuted. Aunt Ju didn't pay attention. She was still watching the TV. She casually said, "It is very bad. The album sold very little. Some people said that they don't want it even if they give it to others for free." "That's not it." Shishi's big eyes were full of tears. She choked and said, she couldn't accept the fact that her most admired mom was not good. "Aya, my little ancestor. Why are you crying?" Aunt Ju noticed at this moment. She quickly put down the bowl and hugged Shishi. She coaxed, "Do you want to drink juice? Aunt will get it for you now." "Oh." Shishi shook her head and sobbed. "I don't want juice. I want Mom." "Aya, where can you find your mother at this time? Your mother is working hard. Otherwise, how can she have the money to buy Shishi nice clothes?" Aunt Ju said. "Then Shishi doesn't want nice clothes. Shishi wants Mom." The little girl thought for a moment and added, "Papa has money. I'll ask Papa to give Mom money." This seemed like a good idea. Your father's money is your father's money. Why would your mother want your father's money? Aunt Ju's attitude was actually similar to Emo Xiaochuan's. She felt sorry for Murphy and was a little disgusted with Yang Yi. She snorted and said. However, she didn't listen. She felt that she seemed to have found a very good idea. "I'll find a chance to tell Papa and ask him to help Mama." She was happy. She missed her father a little. What Mo Fei didn't know was that her daughter's amazing way of thinking had actually helped her a lot. Of course, this was all in the future. Right now, Murphy had unknowingly been set up by someone to cause trouble. Chapter 72. P.S. Everyone is still wondering if the protagonist will write a song for Murphy and when. Don't worry, he will definitely write it. But it won't be the first album, nor will it be these chapters. After all, Murphy's new album is still on the charts. Even if he starts preparing for the new album, he still needs a buffer. Little Han likes to write different routines from other novels. Even if it's writing songs, or the upcoming scandal, the development of the story will definitely be different from what you think. If it's like other novels with all kinds of routines and all kinds of dazzling light, then what's the point? So calm down and watch the development of the story. Anyway, little Han won't write a tragedy. Everything is for a better future. Sister Murphy, please wait a moment. Just as she came out of her recording studio, Murphy was stopped by someone. Looking back, it was a handsome male star. His hair was fixed with a lot of gel, and the fixed hairstyle was stiff and straight, but it also lost its original elegance. Ju Jie, what's the matter? Of course, Murphy recognized this person, although she wasn't very familiar with him. In the past, when Murphy was still the #1 star, Ju Jie was the company's trainee and was unknown. However, Ju Jie had been a newcomer in the company for the past 2 years. His current development was good, and he had already entered the ranks of the C-list male stars. He had also released a good album, and his prospects were considerable. Murphy had a deeper impression of last month's company meeting, when Sister Ling asked Murphy to take care of Ju Jie. However, Murphy wasn't the kind of star who was good at dealing with people. Her connections were shallow, and she was currently in a difficult situation, so when it came to supporting the younger generation, she was powerless. When she saw Ju Jie, Murphy still felt apologetic, and it was rare that she didn't put on a cold look. It's like this, Sister Murphy. You are my senior and have participated in many activities, so you have a lot of experience. Right now, the company is sending me to attend an award ceremony hosted by Southern Media. I would like to ask you about some things that I should pay attention to. Ju Jie's eyes flashed with an inexplicable light as he deliberately got closer. Murphy furrowed her brows slightly. She wasn't used to this kind of intimacy, but because she felt apologetic, she didn't want to appear too distant. So she held back her discomfort and said, "You need a date for the award ceremony." Ju Jie seemed to be listening obediently, but in reality, he was paying attention to the other side from the corner of his eye. When he saw a hand gesture, the corners of his mouth curled up. "Sister Murphy, I know you're busy. Why don't we talk while we walk? I'll help you carry your bag." Ju Jie eagerly extended his hand, seemingly a little flustered, and just happened to place it on Murphy's slender hand. Murphy reflexively retracted her hand with her brows knitted. However, she still held back her anger and did not flare up. "It's fine, Ju Jie." Ju Jie brilliantly retracted his hand. He was also thick-skinned as he chuckled. "I'm sorry, Sister Murphy. I was too eager to show off, so please forgive me for my rudeness." Since the other party had already apologized, how could Murphy still put on airs? She forced a smile that was so fake that even she felt uncomfortable. "It's fine. Where were we?" Murphy really did have something on, so the two of them switched to walking and talking. Murphy wasn't used to Ju Jie's cologne, so she wrinkled her nose and took a few steps forward. But Murphy didn't notice that when she was trying her best to impart her experience to the other party, Ju Jie wasn't listening seriously. He pretended to walk steadily, but his right arm was raised and placed behind Murphy's back. "It's roughly like this. Do you remember it all?" Murphy still said a lot seriously before turning her head to look at Ju Jie. Ju Jie had already pulled his hand back as if nothing had happened. He scratched his head to cover it up and smiled flatteringly. "I remember, Sister Murphy. You're really amazing. Thank you for your help. Why don't I treat you to a meal tonight?" Murphy of course shook her head. She felt uncomfortable being so close to this Ju Jie. She didn't know why, but there was a strong sense of repulsion in her heart. "It's fine. I still have something on tonight," Murphy said coldly. This was Murphy's style of euphemism. Ju Jie smiled brightly. He didn't continue to pester her. Anyway, today's harvest was enough. Murphy actually didn't have anything to do in the evening. She just had to send Shishi to her father's place. Starting tomorrow, she would fly all over the world again. In the last week of the new album promotion period, the company arranged a lot of itineraries for her. Of course, Murphy also missed the delicious food made by Yang Yi. In comparison, Murphy preferred to eat at Yang Yi's place. It was quiet, peaceful and delicious. Who would want to eat with a young man who sprayed cologne? Murphy was very stubborn. She didn't want to pretend to be polite. If someone says goodbye at the terminal station, there will be news of reunion. If at the terminal station, I think you will meet again one day. Yang Yi crossed his hands and sat at his bar with his eyes closed. He quietly listened to the popular old song The Terminal. It was indeed an old song. It had the charm of the slow-paced songs of the 1970s in his previous life. He needed to close his eyes and enjoy it carefully. It was also played with this kind of surround high-fidelity sound equipment, which always made people feel peaceful. However, a series of ringtones broke the peace. Yang Yi frowned. However, when he saw that it was Murphy's call, he quickly stopped the music and answered the phone. "Papa." Shishi's crisp voice came out. Yang Yi couldn't help but smile. "Well, Papa is here. Shishi is coming to Papa's place. Papa, are you very happy?" The little girl giggled. She began to take the initiative and asked about her father. "Of course I am happy. And Mama?" Shishi giggled. "Mom said she wants to eat Papa's cooking. She wants to eat with Shishi and Papa." Yang Yi also heard that Murphy seemed to have been exposed. She shouted angrily, "Yang Yi, that's no problem. Papa will prepare delicious food for you," Yang Yi said softly. "Okay." Shishi cheered happily. The little girl chatted with her father for a while before Murphy grabbed the phone. She was a little embarrassed and pretended to be indifferent. "Don't listen to Shishi's nonsense. I'll bring her here now." You don't need to pick her up. Shawan happens to be free. Please take care of Shishi. I have to go on a business trip tomorrow. Well, as for dinner, if you still have food in the fridge, I can eat some. If it's not convenient, I'll treat you to dinner outside at a hotel. Murphy pretended to be casual and said, It's a meal for you. We don't owe each other anything. Yang Yi was actually a little unhappy with Murphy's attitude. If it was someone else, he wouldn't be interested. But after all, it was Murphy. Yang Yi didn't care. He also pretended to be casual and said, Why go to a hotel? Can those chefs cook better than me? Anyway, I'm used to cooking for one more person. Since you're here, I won't waste it. Heh, let's see who is more casual and who doesn't care more. Murphy gritted her teeth and said snappily, That's not enough. Shawan is also here. Mo Shawan was driving. When she heard this, she quickly said, No, sister. I have something to do later. There's a dinner party. I don't need to go. Of course, she was lying. In fact, she was unwilling. Last time in Shanghai, Mo Shawan could see that the relationship between these two guys had eased. Instead of going up and watching the two of them being lovey-dovey and being abused, she might as well go for a ride. Maybe she could meet a handsome guy on campus. Chapter 73. Since Murphy was coming, Yang Yi was not in the mood to open the restaurant. Anyway, there were only a few customers a day. Therefore, he took off the sign early, closed the door, and went upstairs. Yang Yi knew that Murphy had been so busy these 2 months that she did not eat regularly, so her appetite was not very good. Therefore, he did not intend to prepare a few dishes casually. When Murphy and Shishi arrived home, Yang Yi was wearing an apron and carrying a spatula in the kitchen. Where's Shawan? Yang Yi asked in surprise. Murphy curled her lips and said unhappily, Just us? Do you think that everyone is willing to appreciate your cooking? Shawan has an appointment. I don't know which handsome guy stole her heart. This woman, when facing Yang Yi, seemed to gradually put down the defenses in her heart. Her every frown and smile was full of charm, and she was no longer like before when she had an ice-cold expression on her face every day. Papa, it smells so good. Shishi could not wait to take off her small leather boots and walk in front of him in slippers. She went to the second floor and sniffed like a puppy. Her eyes were shining as she said, Is it time for dinner? Yang Yi took Murphy's bag and walked at the back. He smiled and said, Not yet. We have to wait. The delicious food needs to wait for a while more. However, a few minutes after Yang Yi went into the kitchen, he came out again, holding a plate of strawberries with frost. Murphy and Shishi were very hungry when they saw the bright red strawberries. However, the middle of the strawberries was hollowed out. They did not know what white thing was inside, so they were very curious. What is this? Murphy could not help but ask. This is called condensed milk strawberry ice. Yang Yi smiled and said, I specially choose this kind of big strawberry, cut off the stalk, hollowed out the middle, and then poured condensed milk into it. Finally, I put it in the refrigerator to freeze it. It's completely natural and handmade. You can try it first. After Yang Yi put down the plate, he went back to the kitchen. However, behind him, the two guys, one big and one small, already couldn't wait to eat. It's so cold. His voice was muffled. Yummy, yummy. Cece gasped for air, but she still cried out happily. It's sweet and sour. Mo Fei's voice was as happy as a child who had not grown up yet. Yang Yi, who was cooking in the kitchen, could not help but smile when he heard something. Finally, it was time to eat. Just when Mo Fei and Cece were looking at the dishes on the table longingly, Yang Yi served them the porridge that he had carefully cooked. What is this? Murphy reacted, looking at the soft porridge, and the colorful yellow, black, light red and other ingredients, and asked with some confusion. This is mixed grain porridge. Yang Yi introduced, it's pumpkin, black beans, glutinous rice, millet and peanuts. Then it's boiled until it's soft and melts in the mouth. It's very good for the stomach. Shishi couldn't wait to secretly take a small spoon and eat a small bite, just in time to eat her favorite peanuts. The little girl blinked her big eyes and said happily, Delicious. Gee, you can't be so rude. Wait for your father to sit down, then we can start eating. Murphy, who attached great importance to etiquette, immediately scolded with a stern face. She could only obediently put her 2 small hands on her knees and sit properly. But there was a smile in her eyes, and she even stuck out her little tongue at her father, as if secretly complaining to her father about her mother's strictness. Yang Yi smiled carelessly and continued to explain, but he was concise and comprehensive, because she couldn't help but want to eat quickly. The theme of today's meal is to eat well. To eat well, one must first have an appetite. In that case, I have no choice but to recommend this plate of sweet and sour squid. It's a replica of sweet and sour pork, but the base ingredient is squid, which is more elastic and chewy. This is vegetarian tofu. Although it looks no different from ordinary tofu, it's stuffed with carrots and chopped shiitake mushrooms. This is Shishi's favorite soda chicken wings, similar to cola chicken wings, but called cola chicken wings for the sake of differentiation. It's just lightly fried in oil, so it won't be very hot. This is... Finally, Yang Yi finished and the queen nodded in satisfaction. She waved her chopsticks and ordered confidently, "Let's eat." Shishi was already swallowing her saliva. Hearing this, she happily grabbed the small spoon and ate the porridge with relish. Delicious. It's sweet, Shishi likes it so much. Shishi said vaguely, probably because she ate the pumpkin. It's better than Auntie's. Murphy said somewhat sternly, "Don't talk when eating, Yang Shi. How many times do you want Mom to say it?" Yang Yi picked up a piece of cola chicken wing for his daughter, and put it on the small plate in front of her. He advised, "It's okay, it's just eating, what's the problem with talking?" Of course it's the problem, Shishi is a girl, how can she be like those men, spitting saliva and talking while eating? Murphy was unhappy when she heard this. She put down her chopsticks and argued seriously. Well, if they quarreled, they wouldn't be able to eat. Yang Yi quickly shut his mouth, and only picked up food for them. Shishi was small and couldn't stand up to pick up food on her own. So Yang Yi did what Murphy was supposed to do. At the same time, he also picked up soft and smooth tofu and sweet and sour squid for Murphy. Murphy was actually not used to others picking up food for her. She had been raised to be very independent since she was young, and she even resisted other people's attentions. But this time, it was a little different. Yang Yi was picking up food for her. For some reason, a very strange feeling lingered in her heart. Was it warmth? Was it happiness? Or what was it? Murphy couldn't explain it clearly, so she hesitated for a moment and didn't refuse. Actually, it's because the food he cooks is too delicious. Murphy found an excuse for herself in her heart. Otherwise, I wouldn't give him face. Yang Yi's food was, of course, delicious. Murphy and Shishi were so full that they didn't want to move from their chairs. In the end, Yang Yi cleared the table and suggested, "Let's go to the dam for a walk." "No, I'm not going." Murphy shook her head. "What's the problem? It's night now, there's basically no one on the dam, and the wind is comfortable," Yang Yi persuaded. "Let's go out for a walk and take it as a distraction. I'll drive you back in a while." Shishi was interested. She stretched her arms high to attract her father's attention and then shouted, "I want to go too. I want to go too." "Okay then." Murphy hesitated for a moment, and then agreed. The night wind blew from the Grand Canal, and 3 figures, 2 big and 1 small, appeared on the dark river dam. Yang Yi walked at the back, carefully protecting the 2 in front. Cece walked in the first, but her little hand was held by Mo Fei. The dam was actually very spacious, and there was a tall protective fence, but Murphy was still worried. Actually, this was the first time Yang Yi and Murphy went out for a walk together. If it weren't for Shishi, the cheerful person who kept laughing, the atmosphere might have been a little awkward. But even so, Murphy and Yang Yi still didn't know how to talk to each other. They were silent and kept silent. It was Yang Yi who broke the silence. He said, "I quite like your song, strangers." In the darkness, the water of the Grand Canal gently lapped against the dam. The sound of the water rushing against the dam was very soothing. Murphy turned her head and saw Yang Yi's bright eyes in the darkness. As if they had a telepathic connection, Mo Fei said softly, "How about I sing it for you now?" "But there's no accompaniment," Yang Yi said with some regret. "The inky cold night rain can't wet my heart, just like this old road. Can't wait for the person to come. forever unable to rush, that deep mark of love. Murphy's ethereal voice, with its own melody, was already softly singing. Yang Yi closed his mouth and listened quietly. She, who liked her mother's singing the most, was no longer naughty. She obediently followed her mother's steps, as if she was also following her mother's rhythm. You said that this road is a little dark, but you're not willing to accompany me. The so-called care is only left with indifference. I can only bear the sadness alone. Murphy's singing was sad and tired, like an intoxicating red wine. Yang Yi was a little intoxicated listening to it. Yang Yi looked at Murphy's beautiful figure in the darkness. This quiet and beautiful woman was like an orchid in an empty valley, and actually made people feel pity for her. He couldn't help but have some fanciful thoughts. Strangers. Then, what road were the two of them walking on now? Chapter 74. After sending off Murphy, Yang Yi welcomed a new customer the next day. The deputy manager of the copyright department and the managers of several publishing houses accompanied by him came to Yang Yi's coffee shop. This time, Yang Yi didn't treat them to the best coffee. He put away his treasured Blue Mountain and mandolin. Instead, he made a simple mocha with milk and sugar cubes, which was praised by everyone. Obviously, there was a lot of flattery involved. Yang Yi smiled but did not say anything. He secretly rejoiced in his heart. When it came to negotiations, Yang Yi was not an expert. His best helper was Guizi. Although the little fatty had already finished his college entrance examination, he gave Yang Yi a call with a smile, and went on a graduation trip with his classmates. Naturally, he could not be counted on. However, although Yang Yi did not know how to negotiate, he had brought a magical skill from his previous life, acting. Moreover, he acted like he had a card up his sleeve. When the negotiation started, he acted like he had a card up his sleeve. He asked the publishing houses to use the method of bidding and show him the conditions they had drafted. I hope that everyone can be honest. I will choose the final publishing house according to your conditions. After that, we will discuss in detail. This is to avoid wasting everyone's time. Yang Yi said with a smile. The managers of the publishing houses looked at each other. This was the first time they had met an author like this. Manager Huang, isn't this a little problematic? One of the managers could not help but ask the person in charge of the copyright department. I don't think so. Another manager agreed. Deputy Manager Huang of the copyright department smiled bitterly and shook his head. He said, I think it's okay. Cough cough, it's like this. Because we have discussed with Mr. Yang Yi before, he will have the final say in the transaction of the physical publishing rights. Therefore, we will discuss according to Mr. Yang Yi's request. You can think about it. If you don't want to participate in this bid, it doesn't matter. Even if we don't have a deal, our friendship is still there. Yang Yi also looked unyielding. He did not know what conditions the other party would give him, but Yang Yi was convinced that his books, whether it was Soldier Assault or Drawing Sword, would definitely sell well as long as they were out in physical form. This was tested by the market in his previous life. In an era where piracy was rampant, Drawing Sword, which was published in the new era, sold more than 400,000 copies in 6 or 7 years. It was obvious how valuable it was. In this world where copyright awareness was strong, Yang Yi could already foresee the prospects of his two so-called web novels and physical book sales leaps and bounds. Therefore, he was confident that he was not afraid of negotiations. Sure enough, after the managers of several publishing houses looked at each other, the manager who shouted the loudest was the first to pick up a pen and paper. The others also swarmed over and almost fought over it. The selection process of the hidden bid was needless to say. In the end, Yang Yi picked up an envelope and said loudly like a broker at the stock exchange, Mr. Liu from Sahara Publishing, congratulations. We can discuss further in detail now. A thin man with messy hair stood up in surprise. He raised his hand and said, I am Mr. Liu. However, Yang Yi's choice caused an uproar in the room. Even Deputy Manager Huang was surprised. Are you kidding me? The manager who shouted the loudest just now jumped out again. He shouted angrily, What kind of conditions did Sahara Publishing offer you? I don't believe that a small publishing house like them can offer better conditions than our big publishing houses. Well, I'm sorry. It's not convenient for me to disclose it to you. Yang Yi smiled and refused. Deputy Manager Huang couldn't help but stand up. He said, Mr. Yang Yi, although it's not suitable for me to interrupt at this time, shouldn't you consider it again? In terms of scale, Sahara Publishing is indeed smaller than the other three. Even if the conditions given to you are better now, in the long run, it's difficult for them to give you the benefits from sales to be comparable to the other three. That's right. You're too short-sighted. The other three managers echoed one after another. The thin Mr. Liu actually didn't have much hope when he saw the other three competitors, but now that he was chosen, he was as happy as if he had won a prize. But now that Deputy Manager Huang and the others said so, he became nervous again. He was afraid that the duck that was in his mouth would fly away again. He quickly said, although our publishing house is not big, we are very sincere. Mr. Yang, we can still discuss the conditions that you just wrote. Yang Yi raised his hand to quiet them down. He said faintly, actually, the reason why I chose Sahara Publishing was not only because the conditions they offered were very sincere, but also because they have an advantage that the other three don't have. This time, everyone was stunned. Didn't Sahara Publishing say that it was smaller than the other three? What? The one who shouted the loudest couldn't help but ask. Sahara Publishing has an additional channel to sell physical books online compared to you all. Yang Yi said faintly. In fact, Yang Yi wasn't calm. The online shopping model in this world had only shown a small sign, and it wasn't as big as Taobao in his previous life. Yang Yi was surprised by Sahara Publishing's foresight. Their boss set up an online website to sell physical books. Readers could pay for books through registered mail or bank transfer, and then send the books to the readers through the library. This model was very similar to the earliest Zhua, 99, and Dangdang in Yang Yi's previous life. It could be said that this was the prototype of an online bookstore. What's the difference between this and online novels? With this kind of online sales, they won't be able to sell more than a few books a month, and the readers still have to pay for the books by mail. It's not even as good as us. Our company has connections with Far East and Zhonghua bookstores. There were always people who were still stuck in the old mindset, and they mocked Yang Yi's choice. However, Yang Yi's choice didn't change, and he calmly apologized to the other party. In the end, only Yang Yi and Mr. Liu were left in the coffee shop. Everyone else left in anger, and even Deputy Manager Huang smiled bitterly. He clasped his hands at Yang Yi, and then chased after them. Deputy Manager Huang felt that the profits from physical sales of Yang Yi's books weren't a big deal, but he still had to establish good relations with these publishers. After all, online literature was still the weak side, and publishing houses had a lot of resources, and there were still many things that needed to be done with them. Then Mr. Liu, whose hair was messy, said nervously. He didn't dare to touch the new coffee that Yang Yi had served him. Then let's talk about the conditions for me to invest in your publishing house. Yang Yi waved his hand and smiled. This aura immediately scared Mr. Liu silly. It was unknown how Mr. Liu would feel if he knew that Yang Yi's savings were less than a few $100,000, but he still wanted to invest in someone else's publishing house. Chapter 75. Yang Yi wanted to be involved in the Sahara Publishing House, or strictly speaking, the Sahara Online Bookstore. Of course, it was not a decision that a small manager like Mr. Liu could make. Mr. Liu asked the boss in fear and trepidation. Then the negotiation was postponed, and the boss personally came out. After sending away the guest, Yang Yi breathed a sigh of relief. At this time, Shi, who was hiding on the sofa and peeping at them, ran over and acted like a spoiled child, asking her father to hug her. Yang Yi doted on the little girl a little. After all, she was the closest person to him in terms of blood and affection. He picked up Shi and let her sit on his strong arms. Papa, do you have a lot of money? Shishi's voice was soft, and her small hands were also soft. She grabbed the flesh on her father's cheek and played with it while asking. Yang Yi's whole body was full of muscles, but when his daughter grabbed him like this, even steel would turn into molten iron. Even a tough man could not escape from her soft hands. Well, I have some money. What's wrong? Is our Shishi going to be Dad's little housekeeper? Yang Yi laughed happily, so gentle that it was not like him. No, no. The little girl twisted her butt and waved her hand to explain. Shishi wants Papa to give some money to Mom. Mom is so pitiful. This time, Yang Yi was confused. Give money to Murphy? Regardless of whether Murphy wanted his money or not. Yang Yi gave money to Murphy. Wasn't that stupid? This woman was too rich. Not to mention the mansion. Who knew how much money she had saved over the years? Yang Yi thought about his six-figure savings and secretly laughed. The other party's money was probably dozens, or even hundreds of times more than his. Why do you say your mother is pitiful? Yang Yi asked puzzledly. On TV, Mom is so pitiful. She's being bullied. Shishi pouted and said, Auntie also said that Mom worked very hard, but the bad guy on TV said that Mom didn't. Shishi was still very naive. She took her father's hand and looked at him pitifully with her big eyes. She begged, Papa, can you give some money to Mom so that Mom won't be so sad? She can also spend more time with Shishi. Yang Yi finally understood the ins and outs of the problem. He smiled somewhat helplessly and reached out his hand to rub the little fellow's head. Today he didn't braid her hair. It was so soft and smooth that it felt especially good. Your mother, how should I put it? She didn't work for money. Yang Yi thought for a moment and said, Your mother likes singing, so she wants to try again and return to the stage she is familiar with. Shishi looked at her father in confusion and tried hard to understand what her father said. Yang Yi also tried to explain in simple words. So in the process she may be criticized or questioned by others, but this is the process that your mother has to bear. Just like Shishi wants to eat delicious tiramisu, she has to wait a long time for Dad to make it. Then Shishi doesn't want to eat tiramisu, Shishi can eat a small cake. The little girl didn't understand at all and said anxiously, Shishi doesn't want Mom to be scolded. As she spoke, the mist floated up. The little girl's skin was white and translucent, and it was easy to see the change. So immediately, her eyes turned red and she was about to cry. Yang Yi quickly comforted her. Okay, Shishi, don't worry, Dad will find a way. I won't let your mother be depressed forever. Really? Shishi suddenly became happy with tears in her eyes and asked happily, Is Papa going to help Mom? In fact, she was subconsciously thinking about the problem of money. Back then, Yang Yi took her to the bank to withdraw money. Seeing is believing. She felt that since her father had so much money, he would definitely be able to help her mother. Of course. If I don't help your mother, who else can? Yang Yi smiled faintly. Although he was very calm, his eyes were shining with confidence. Of course, Yang Yi wasn't thinking about money. In fact, he had already started to choose suitable songs for Murphy. With such a large music library in his previous life, Yang Yi didn't worry about whether he could write songs for Murphy. He also contributed to the sales of more than 10 copies of Murphy's new album. He bought all of Murphy's new albums on a shelf in an audio and video store. However, when he came back and listened to it, he could still understand why the media had been pessimistic about Murphy's comeback. In the new album, except for a few old songs that were very good, the 8 new songs, including the title song, were all songs of poor quality. Perhaps Yang Yi's judgment standards were indeed very strict, but Yang Yi felt that if Murphy wasn't Shishi's mother, he would never buy such an album. However, Murphy's voice and singing were still impeccable. Yang Yi even felt that Murphy was better than before she retired. Perhaps it was because she had more experience, or perhaps it was because she still persevered in practicing over the years, or perhaps it was because of the precipitation and accumulation in many aspects. Yang Yi believed that as long as there were good songs, Murphy would definitely be able to amaze the world. Of course, there was still a problem now. Murphy's previous attitude made Yang Yi have a wrong understanding. Murphy definitely didn't want him to intervene in her career. If he proposed to write songs for her, with her stubborn character, she would definitely not be willing. From God's perspective, Yang Yi's idea was obviously a misunderstanding. But who asked Murphy to hold a relatively old understanding of Yang Yi? Once Yang Yi mentioned Murphy's work, Murphy was a little sensitive. Of course, Yang Yi also had a concern. That was, if he wrote songs for Murphy, would Murphy be suspicious again? Yang Yi had shown 3 skills that Yang Yi didn't have before: making coffee, writing, and cooking. These were things that Mo Fei could barely accept. But in terms of music, Murphy herself was an expert. How could she not know that music wasn't learned in a few years? Yang Yi not only resisted the entertainment industry in the past, but also showed that he didn't know anything about music. At this time, if he suddenly took out a few well-produced songs, how could Murphy not be suspicious? Therefore, Yang Yi had always been hiding. At most, when he was alone, or after she went to sleep, he would play the guitar, play the songs he liked in his previous life, or learn some of the excellent music works in this world. In front of Murphy, he didn't dare to show it. In the future, maybe he could gradually let Murphy see his musical talent, but this might need a process before she could accept it naturally. But now Yang Yi still decided to use the side account Muziang to write songs for Murphy. Because of this, Yang Yi had also closed the private information of the stage name, Muziang, on the copyright organization. Other than Chen Yijie and the others from Tianxiang who knew who Muziang was, the others, or Murphy, would have a hard time finding out who wrote songs for her. This was fun. Chapter 76. Just as Yang Yi was preparing to write a song for Murphy, who had always been clean and didn't have any scandals, suddenly broke out in a scandal. Older sister, younger brother? Murphy exposed to love with Ju Jia. The news was spread through an entertainment media with its own portal. This kind of news was actually not surprising. There were often all kinds of gossip or rumors. Only those small newspapers that specialized in spreading scandals would compete to report those rumors that had no concrete evidence. But this time was different. The website exposed photos, and there were more than 1 or 2. Although they were secretly taken, it could clearly be seen that Ju Jia and Murphy were talking intimately. What's more, in the last photo, it could be seen that Ju Jia was hugging Murphy. What if this wasn't concrete evidence? Then what was? Immediately, all the major media and tabloids reprinted it. The media was still okay, but the tabloids had no integrity at all. Shocking. Jade female songstress actually did such a thing with underage man. This was the title of a tabloid in Guangdong province. It was quite similar to the style of the UC shocking department in Yang Yi's previous life. It was said that after it was printed, the sales increased greatly. Frustrated in the music world, successful in love, Murphy fell into the trap of love. Disappointing, Murphy's golden flower has also been plucked. Murphy, who had been silent for a long time because of the album, once again appeared on the headlines of major media. This news was really too hot. Whether or not they were Murphy's fans, people who had once understood Murphy's brilliance were all talking about it. The sudden surge in popularity also added fuel to the sales of Murphy's new album. But Murphy wasn't happy to see this scene. After she learned the news from Mo Shaowan, she angrily rushed back to Jiangqing and directly rushed to Sister Ling's office. "Why did you do this?" Murphy gritted her teeth and asked angrily. "What do you mean?" Sister Ling pretended to be innocent. But Murphy didn't buy it. She tightly gripped the back of the chair and said, "Sister Ling, we've worked together for 7 or 8 years. Do you think I don't know what you're best at? But we've always agreed that I won't touch these things. Why are you still using me?" "Use you?" At this moment, Niu Meiling did not pretend anymore. Ignoring Murphy's frown, she lit a thin and long cigarette, took a puff, and then leisurely said, "Murphy, how old are you? How can you still not distinguish between good and bad? Should I use you or help you?" Without waiting for Murphy to respond, she threw out a document and said to Murphy, "Look at the sales of your album. It's all thanks to the hype over the past 2 days. Otherwise, where would you get more than 200,000 yuan? In the last week, except for a few relatively BT albums, normal album sales will enter a period of weakness." Murphy's album is the same. Before the sales increase, there are only 5 or 6,000 copies left. To suddenly increase to more than 100,000 a day, this is obviously more surprising. "But I don't need it," Murphy said coldly. "I don't need such results. Even if I lose, I want to lose fair and square." Murphy's personality is very straightforward. Or it can be said that she is a clear stream in the entertainment industry. She wants real results and can't tolerate a little sand in her eyes. Murphy, you have to understand. Neil Myling shouted and said. Now you are no longer the top star from before. You can't even enter the A-list. The company still gives you so many resources, but your results can't be compared to others. Song Yun, Han Fei, or their last album's results are better than yours, right? Why are you still so arrogant? You don't listen to the company's arrangements? Murphy was stunned. She looked at the other party in a daze and suddenly felt that this sister Ling, who used to like and understand her, was a little strange. Neil Myling also realized that her tone was a little harsh and accidentally shouted out the fire in her heart. After all, she is one of the biggest managers in the entertainment industry, so she quickly controlled her temper. Isn't the company's arrangement for your own good? Neil Myling's voice became gentler, as if Sister Ling had returned. Murphy, you have to understand that Sister Ling also wants to fight for better results for you, so that you won't be laughed at. But why didn't you discuss it with me first? Murphy was still brooding. If I discussed it with you, would you have agreed? Neil Myling waved her hand and smiled. So Sister Ling can only kill first and report later. It seems that the effect is not bad. However, Murphy really didn't like this feeling. She bit her lower lip and said, I'm going to clarify it with the reporters. She added, she can see it. I don't want her to think that Mom is such a person who will do anything for results. You can clarify it, but not now. Neil Myling's attitude was firm and soft. Murphy, you have to understand Sister Ling's difficulties. Wait a few more days and clarify it after this week, okay? Sister Ling is begging you. With that said, how could Murphy continue to fight with the other party? After all, she was indebted to Sister Ling. Coming out of Sister Ling's office, Murphy met the other main character of the scandal, Zhu Jie. These days, Zhu Jie could be said to be in high spirits. He also benefited from this scandal and received a lot of attention. It was as if he was going to go from a third-tier celebrity to a second-tier celebrity. He was so proud that even his cologne was thicker. However, Murphy didn't give him any face this time. She kept a cold face and completely ignored Zhu Jie's greeting. She walked away with a hostile aura. Teach. After Mo Fei left, Zhu Jie turned his head in disdain, turned around, and pushed the door open. Auntie Ling, I think I'm in a good state right now. Why don't we strike while the iron is hot and arrange an album for me? Coming out of the company, even though it was a hot summer day, Murphy still felt cold as she got into Mo Xiaojuan's car. Sister, where are we going? Mo Xiaojuan asked with trepidation. Tiang. Murphy suddenly stopped. She hesitated for a moment, and changed her words. Let's go home. I'm tired. When Murphy got home, she curled up on the sofa tiredly. The nanny, Auntie Zhu, saw this and quickly hid in her nanny's room. Murphy hesitated for a moment before taking out her phone and dialing Yang Yi's number. The phone rang for a long time before Yang Yi picked it up. Hello. Yang Yi's voice was very calm. Murphy was silent for a moment before saying, Don't believe the scandal in the newspaper. Okay. Murphy suddenly felt wronged. That was arranged by the company to create hype. I didn't know about it. I know. Yang Yi still replied calmly. But the more he was like this, the more flustered Murphy felt. She angrily said, You're jealous. I'm not. Yang Yi replied after a while. Well, this time it was a lie. Yang Yi was indeed jealous, although he didn't understand what that feeling was. Anyway, after seeing the news, his heart was flustered. But what Yang Yi said before was true. He knew that this was a publicity stunt. He could see it from the photos. Yang Yi's sharp eyes could immediately distinguish whether it was a real hug or a mistake. However, even so, looking at the headlines of the news, Yang Yi felt very unhappy. Then he really wanted to cut that brat into two pieces. In his previous life, those who angered him, no one could leave a whole corpse. But Murphy's phone call and explanation made his mood better. Of course, with his character, it was hard for him to show it. You are. Murphy sensitively thought that Yang Yi had become cold and indifferent. She felt so wrong that she wanted to die. She even sounded like she was about to cry. It was obviously not her fault. Okay, I'm really not jealous. Don't worry. Yang Yi had a headache and could only coax her like how he coaxed Shishi. I've already told you the truth. You're not allowed to be jealous. Murphy pursed her lips and said very seriously. Okay, I'm not jealous. You are. This silly Scorpio. Chapter 77. Mo Fei's scandal got bigger and bigger under the influence of some people with ulterior motives. But for Yang Yi, he still believed in his own eyes. Whether there was something going on between Mo Fei and that Zhu Jie, it could be seen from those secretly taken photos. What's more, Murphy also explained it to him, so Yang Yi didn't take it to heart. On the contrary, Murphy was worried and uncomfortable, while Yang Yi, who had a big heart, happily took his daughter to the temple fair according to the original plan. In addition to many well-preserved ancient villages in Tingshan district, there were also some interesting traditional customs, such as the temple fair in the middle of every month. Yang Yi heard from the neighbors that this temple fair was very popular and large-scale. Whether it was the old people who liked traditional customs, the young people who liked bustling places, or the greedy children, they could all find their fun. Yang Yi had been looking forward to it for a long time, so he specially asked when the temple fair would be held this month. Finally, the day came. In the evening, without having dinner, Yang Yi set off with Shishi. Papa, I want to eat a lot of delicious food. Shishi sat in the car and couldn't hold back her excitement. Like a lark, she chattered with her sweet voice. How much delicious food is there? You and Papa have never been there. How do you know there will be a lot of delicious food? Yang Yi teased her. What if there is no delicious food? Shishi covered her mouth with her two small hands, and her big eyes were full of surprise. The naive little fellow believed it, and hurriedly asked nervously. What should we do? Is Shishi going to be hungry? Originally, Shishi was very cute, but now she was serious. It was even more fun. Ha 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 ha. Yang Yi couldn't help laughing because of his daughter. For safety, he gently stepped on the clutch to slow down the car. Oh, Shishi wants to eat something delicious. The little girl was unwilling to comply and cried out. Yang Yi smiled and said, All right, there will be a lot of delicious food. Daddy promises. I won't let Shishi starve. The temple fair was not held in the university town, but on the street of City God Temple at the foot of the North Pavilion Mountain. Before they arrived, Yang Yi could already feel the excitement. His car couldn't enter, so he had to find a parking lot far away. In the afterglow of the setting sun, Yang Yi held Shishi's little hand and walked over. Because there was a slight slope, they could see a spacious but somewhat crowded long street from afar. There were many shops on both sides of the street, but more of them were street vendors who took advantage of the spacious street to set up their stalls. There were also many wandering hawkers pushing carts and hawking their wares. It was only when they got closer that they could feel the liveliness of the place. Signboards hung high above their heads, banners fluttered in the wind, and people surged around them, jostling shoulder to shoulder. The sounds of hawking, shouting, chatting, and laughter rang in their ears. It was even noisier than a wet market. There are so many people. Shishi was a little nervous. Obviously, it was the first time for her to encounter such a complicated environment. She was so small, but all she could see were all kinds of legs. She couldn't help but raise her head and see strange and scary adults. She always felt that she was going to be pushed around by the rolling crowd, so she held her father's hand tightly in fear. Suddenly, she felt that her armpit was lifted, and then her whole body flew up as if she was riding on the clouds. She rotated and sat on her father's neck. Oh, Shishi hurriedly held her father's head tightly, for fear that she would fall. It was not the first time that she had experienced this action, but every time she sat on his neck, Shishi would be very nervous, and the feeling of slight dizziness was very scary. You're covering Daddy's eyes. Yang Yi smiled helplessly. He reached out to pull Shishi's clothes. Today, Shishi was wearing denim shorts, a short-sleeved t-shirt, and a small vest, which looked fresh and delicate. Of course, sitting on her father's neck, it was not easy for her to be exposed. After adapting to the feeling of being in the air, Sisi became lively. Not only could she see far from where she was sitting, but her field of vision had also widened. More importantly, she was hugging her father's head, so she didn't have to worry about being squeezed. The little girl's sense of security slowly increased. It smells so good. Shishi looked around happily, and kept calling her father. Papa, look, there are so many delicious things. Papa, look, what is this? Yang Yi was still very patient. Although sometimes he was interrupted by his daughter when he saw the calligraphy and painting stall that he was interested in, Yang Yi still patiently followed his daughter's instructions. This is a sugar figurine. The boss's skill is good. Yang Yi was also interested. He did not expect that this old business still existed in this world. Perhaps even if there were differences in history, some livelihood developed from material needs would still appear. Hey, this little brother has good eyesight. The old man, whose business was very good and busy, looked up at Yang Yi and Shishi, and said with a smile, My skill of drawing sugar figurines was learned in Sichuan province. Birds, beasts, trees, flowers, fruits, as long as you name it, there is nothing that I can't draw. Look, Shishi also wants it. The little girl said enviously when she saw the grandfather stick a painted sugar figurine on the bamboo chopsticks, gently scoop it up, and hand it to a young man next to him. Then I'll have to trouble you to draw a dragon for my daughter. Yang Yi smiled and said, She is a dragon. You have to draw those cute little dragons. Cece added. The little girl was talking about the cartoon dragon that her father used to draw for her, a cartoon version. She preferred that kind of little dragon. It was very cute and looked better than the big dragon that was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. Yang Yi smiled. He put Shishi down and said to the old man, The dragon she wants is not as fierce as the ones in our usual New Year's pictures. It is shorter, has a bigger head, and looks more cute. It was a pity that there were no strokes. Otherwise, Yang Yi could draw it for the other party as a reference. It doesn't matter. Grandpa will draw one for you. What do you think? What do you think? The old man said to Shishi with a smile. Shishi nodded shyly. The old man first boiled the sugar. As he boiled, he introduced, The real skill of drawing a sugar figurine is not only in the drawing, but also in boiling the sugar. If the sugar is too thick and thin, don't even think about drawing a good sugar figurine. After all, the old man had been a craftsman for most of his life. He was very confident in his skills. After boiling the sugar, he calmed down and scooped up the syrup with a spoon. Using the spoon as a pen, he drew on the copper plate. He was not inferior to a calligrapher who wrote big characters. The old man moved his wrist and the spoon. Sometimes he lifted it, sometimes he shook it, sometimes he paused, and sometimes he deepened it. The embryonic form of a small dragon had already appeared. Shishi also stood on tiptoe and looked curiously. However, she did not dare to breathe loudly. She was so sincere that it was as if she was looking at a very delicate work of art. She was afraid that it would break if she breathed. Finally, the old man finished drawing. It was indeed a traditional dragon, but the head was a little bigger and the feet were a little shorter. It looked very funny. However, it had to be said that the old man's skills were very good. The lines on the dragon's body were clear, and the beard and hair at the corners of the dragon's mouth were also drawn. When gently scooped up, the thin beard and hair were still firmly stuck to the dragon's body. The old man stuck the sugar figurine with a bamboo stick, and shook it in front of Shishi. He asked with a smile, Little girl, do you think Grandpa's drawing is good? It's good. Shishi was stunned. She hugged her father's leg and said obediently, Then do you want it? The old man asked with a smile. Shishi looked at her father embarrassedly, but the desire in her eyes was revealed. Yang Yi smiled and took out the money. How could he not want it? He even gave her an extra 100 yuan as his respect and support for his rival's skills. However, Shishi held this little sugar dragon in her hand and was unwilling to eat it the entire night. Chapter 78. Like a cloud that just came out of the mountains. I only thought that he was frivolous, but it turned out that his bones were not vulgar. Demure like a flower shining on the water, moving like a willow in the wind. Delicate eyebrows and corners of eyes, gentle voice and smile. Clearly an outsider in front of me, but in the bottom of my heart, I feel like an old friend. Although there was a lot of food at the temple fair, there were also many things to play and watch. Along the way, Yang Yi took his daughter to enjoy the performances of many Jianghu artists, such as juggling, playing with monkeys, and small fights. A traveling circus performed Shaoxing opera in the open air, which attracted many old people to watch. P.S. When it comes to Shaoxing opera, you may not have any idea what it is. At the beginning of the chapter, the famous section of Shaoxing opera, Sister Lin Fell from the Sky, was selected from the Shaoxing opera, Dream of the Red Chamber. Many people should have heard of it. Of course, in this world, Dream of the Red Chamber does not exist, so Xiaohan deleted the opening Sister Lin Fell from the Sky. Yang Yi, who was listening to Shaoxing opera for the first time, also watched with great interest for a while until she was a little impatient. And then he walked away. After all, it was difficult for a child to come into contact with traditional opera without special talent or the influence of her grandparents. However, there were still many things to play at the temple fair. Instead of staying in the same place for too long, it was better to walk around and see more new things. Along the way, they ate a lot of food, such as beef offal, fried dough twist, bowl cake, and so on. It seemed that there were all kinds of delicious food from all over the world. Shishi's little belly was already bulging, but she still wanted more. Papa, I want this. Shishi seemed to see something. She excitedly shook her little butt, raised her hand and shouted. Yang Yi was afraid that Shishi would fall, so he quickly raised his hand and supported her little butt from behind. Then he smiled and said, "You still want to eat? Think about how much you ate tonight. You'll be full later and your stomach will hurt." Shishi moved her little feet and said, "It's not food. Papa, look, that Big Bear baby is very cute. I want a Big Bear baby." At this moment, Yang Yi looked in the direction Sisi was pointing at. It turned out that it was not a food stall, but a balloon stall set up by several young people in the village. Customers could use money to exchange for small darts. 10 yuan for 5, 20 yuan for 12. And the attractive dolls on the side were their prizes. However, what Sisi said was wrong. The big bear cub that she seemed to like very much wasn't a bear. How could Yang Yi not recognize the black and white color, and the dark circles under its eyes that seemed to be covered in eyeshadow? This is a giant panda plushie. Seeing Yang Yi coming over, especially seeing Sisi's shining eyes, a young man knew that there was a chance. He hurriedly came up and said, "If you can break the balloon with 3 of your 5 darts, you can get a third prize from us. If you can break the balloon with 4 darts, you can get a second prize from us. What kind of result does the giant panda need? Hit all 5 darts?" Yang Yi asked with a smile. Yang Yi was not interested in those small prizes, and she was only interested in the giant panda plushie. Now that the little girl saw her father talking to someone else, she did not dare to shout loudly. She leaned over to her father's ear and whispered, "Yes, I want this Big Bear baby. This is our special prize this time." The young man puffed out his chest and said proudly, "You have to spend 20 yuan to participate in the ultimate challenge. This time the challenge is 12 darts. As long as you hit 10 balloons, you can get our giant panda plushie." Obviously, this requirement was a bit high. There was an endless stream of people coming in, and a lot of small gifts were given out, but this obviously expensive giant panda plushie was still not one. "Give me 20 yuan. Yang Yi put Shishi down and smiled as he took out the money. "Okay." The young man took it and eagerly prepared the darts for Yang Yi. Seeing that someone was playing the ultimate challenge, several guests who were throwing darts stopped one after another. Many tourists who were watching also came over to watch excitedly. Seeing so many people, Shishi was actually a little nervous, so she grabbed her father's pants. However, she proudly puffed out her chest, clenched her small fist and whispered, "Papa, you can do it." The onlookers were all amused by Shishi's cute appearance. "This child is so beautiful. So cute. She will be amazing when she grows up. She will definitely be a beauty. Uncle, you can do it. You can do it." Everyone was talking at once. Although it did not affect Yang Yi, he still nodded at everyone and smiled as he patted Shishi's little head. If this was in the past, Yang Yi would have ignored other people's voices. Now that he was influenced by the environment, or maybe it was because he became a father, his personality gradually became more easygoing. Yang Yi was a master of cold weapons in his previous life. He played with guns, but his favorite weapons were knives and all kinds of small hidden weapons. How could these small darts stump him? Yang Yi held the dart, raised his hand, and threw it casually. Puffed! This was not the sound of a balloon exploding. The dart was stuck on the foam board next to the balloon. Yang Yi's expression suddenly became awkward. That relaxed and casual look seemed to have become a joke. No way? How could it miss? Yang Yi frowned. He felt that his technique and strength were very moderate. It was not much different from his previous life when he never missed. Yang Yi did not believe it and tried again. Pfft! The onlookers sighed in pity. Sigh, darts are not thrown like this, right? Some people couldn't help but want to comment. In their opinion, throwing a dart was done after aiming for a long time. How could it be like Yang Yi, who didn't even seem to aim and threw the dart with his hand from his waist? How could he possibly hit the target? But this time, Yang Yi did not pay attention to them. He frowned and looked at the remaining 10 darts in his hand. So that's how it works. When Yang Yi tried the second dart, he felt that there was a problem with the feel of the dart the moment it flew out. The boss had done something to the tail. When the dart flew out, it was difficult to maintain a relatively straight line due to air resistance. Although it was a parabola, it could be close to a straight line if the speed was fast enough. Therefore, the more accurate the aim, the more likely it was to miss. Yang Yi found the problem and threw the next dart. Of the remaining 10 darts, Yang Yi threw 8 of them and missed 2. Although Yang Yi had grasped the trajectory of the darts, there were always a few that had been tampered with, but the deflection angle was different. Congratulations to this gentleman for winning the first prize. The young man saw so many onlookers and raised his voice. He was ready to take the first prize and take the opportunity to call on everyone to challenge him. No need, I will try again. Please collect the darts I used just now. I still want to challenge with them. Yang Yi rejected his first prize and handed him another 20 yuan. Chapter 79. When she saw that her father didn't win the prize, Shishi's discomfort was written all over her face. Although the first prize dog plushie sent by the young vendor was a bit interesting, in the eyes of Shishi, who wanted a big bear cub, nothing could compare to her big bear cub. Yang Yi understood his daughter's thoughts, so he didn't hesitate and directly asked for the next round of challenges. The onlookers, on the other hand, were kind-hearted and tried to persuade him. The first prize is not bad. Why are you so stubborn? It's very difficult to hit 10 darts. 10 yuan each time, 10 yuan each time. After a few times, it's enough to buy one. This scammer, if he really hit 10 darts, I don't think the boss would be willing to give it to him. When the young man heard this, he was really unwilling. He straightened his neck and said to the onlookers, why wouldn't he be willing to give it to him? If this boss hits 10 darts, of course, we will give him the special prize with both hands. Don't think that our first prize is cheap. This boss took our first prize for 10 yuan. We lost a lot, the young man said with some grievance. Of course, this was also an act. Although Yang Yi lost a little by winning the first prize, he still made a profit overall. After all, most people threw darts like Hanzo's arrows. Whether they hit or not depended on fate. Moreover, even though Yang Yi had won the first prize, they had gained a lot of popularity. There were still quite a few people who were itching to join in the fun. Some of them could not wait to pay up and line up to play in person. These were all future benefits. However, the discussion of the onlookers worried Shishi. The little girl pulled on her father's trouser leg. When her father squatted down and asked why, she pouted and whispered, I want a big bear cub. The little girl looked so wrong that Yang Yi's heart was about to melt. He smiled and patted Shishi's little shoulder and said, don't worry, watch Dad. Yang Yi took the 12 darts from the young man. He picked up one first, weighed it gently, and touched the tail. It's quite decent. Someone next to them laughed out loud. Don't be noisy, I'm so nervous. The person just now was slapped on the head by his companion. His companion looked nervously at Yang Yi, as if it wasn't Yang Yi throwing, but him. Of course, Yang Yi was not affected by the discussions around him. He calmed down and felt the weight of the dart. Then he suddenly shook his wrist and threw the dart out. This time his movement was not big, but he was good at using his strength. Bang! What a pleasant explosion! The dart pierced the balloon and stuck on the foam board. Wow! The onlookers cried out in surprise, and the cheers were endless. Cece was actually a little afraid of the sound of balloons exploding. She covered her ears with her two little hands, but when she saw this scene, the little girl's eyes turned into two sweet crescent moons. Yang Yi's expression was very calm, as if he was wearing earplugs. He was unmoved. He picked up the second dart, felt the weight of the dart just like before, and then lowered his shoulder and shook his wrist. Pung! Another balloon exploded. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. It was unknown when it started, but the audience had already started counting down loudly for Yang Yi. This accuracy was like shooting a willow leaf from 100 paces away, making them all Yang Yi's fans. There were more and more curious onlookers, and the young people at the stall didn't have time to worry about whether Yang Yi would take away their big prize. They even started to introduce some customers who wanted to play, and asked them to line up for money. They couldn't stop smiling. When Yang Yi threw the third last dart, and there were still two more in his hand, the onlookers finally saw the result they wanted to see. Yeah. They all cheered, as if it wasn't Yang Yi who had won the special prize but them. Special prize, special prize, special prize. Nobody knew who took the lead, but they all shouted in unison. It was so lively and happy. She was the same. Her little face was red, and she was so excited that she waved her little fists. She was so affected by the atmosphere that she forgot that she was a little lady. The young man at the stall didn't have any reluctance at this time. He also wanted to strike while the iron was hot, so he proudly held the special prize. A panda doll that was half the height of a person. Then, like a referee in a boxing ring, he raised one of Yang Yi's hands. Let us congratulate this challenger. He has won our special first prize. The young man's shout won more cheers and more onlookers. Yang Yi didn't care. He still looked calm and collected. On the other hand, Shishi looked at the big bear cub eagerly and couldn't help but jump in joy. The young man also took the opportunity to promote his game. Here, 5 yuan. Don't worry about losing the special prize. Also, our people are running back to get it now. As long as you dare to win, we dare to give it to you. There is no upper limit for the special prize. After saying that, he suddenly remembered something. He turned to Yang Yi a little nervously and whispered, Brother, look, your daughter has already gotten what she wants. She won't play anymore, right? Yang Yi was amused. He raised his right hand, and there were 2 remaining darts between his fingers. Suddenly he shook his hand, and the 2 darts were thrown out. They hit the 2 balloons at the edge of the foam board. This dazzling skill once again set off the exclamations of the onlookers. However, Yang Yi didn't have any intention of showing off. It was just a small scene. Yang Yi held the panda doll in one hand and held his daughter's hand with the other. He smiled calmly at the stunned young man. Don't worry, we are going to play something else. Yang Yi left after winning the panda doll for his daughter. It was as if he was going to leave when the matter was done. He left a lot of popularity for the dart stall that he had casually cleared. She didn't want to sit on her father's neck and watch the show. She was so happy that she held her father's hand. She walked with a spring in her step. From time to time, she would go around and touch the panda doll. Then, she would smile happily and go back to her father's right side. Shishi, there is cotton candy. Do you want to eat cotton candy? Yang Yi was actually going to take his daughter back, but he happened to see a vendor selling cotton candy. He became interested. What's cotton candy? Shishi curiously followed her father. She looked at the cloud-like thing, and was a little surprised. Is this edible? Of course it is. Yang Yi smiled. He held the panda doll in his right arm, and held his daughter's hand tightly. Then he took out some money with his left hand. Boss, give me a cotton candy. Okay. At this time, the female boss with the big straw hat looked up. Yang Yi was stunned. She looked very familiar. Chapter 80. P.S. None of you guessed it right. Who said that she was a florist? Be reasonable. Don't treat every female character as the female lead. Murphy is the only female lead. Oh right, Shishi is also the female lead. Don't treat your daughter as the female lead, haha. It was a tanned and skinny girl. She looked a little immature, but she did things very quickly. She was even skilled at rolling the cotton candy. However, Yang Yi had seen this girl before. Please wait for a moment. The girl hadn't recognized him yet. She took Yang Yi's money and nodded politely at him, and the little girl who had popped her head out of the panda plushie. Yang Yi was very curious. When the girl was almost done rolling the cotton candy, he finally couldn't help but ask, "Aren't you a student from Jiangqing Media University?" Of course, this question wasn't out of the blue. The girl was still wearing the Jiangqing Media University uniform. "Yes. You recognized me?" The girl admitted openly. She finished rolling the cotton candy and handed it over with a sincere smile. "This is an extra large cotton candy. Your daughter can eat more. I hope the little girl will like it." She shyly hid behind and only popped her head out. Of course, seeing the little girl's smile, she also shyly responded with a shy smile. "Thank you, big sister." Her voice was still very soft, but the girl still heard it. She smiled and said, "You're welcome. This is a gift from big sister." Yang Yi didn't care. He was curious about why the girl was in the cotton candy business. "Last month, Shishi and I were looking at the sea of flowers in Luoxia village. We were having a picnic in the forest at noon when we met you." Yang Yi saw that the girl couldn't remember, so he reminded her. This time the girl really remembered. Her memory wasn't bad. She smiled brightly. "I remember now. So it was you. Your daughter was still resting at that time. I'm sorry to disturb you." "You still remember?" "Of course. You even brought a lot of tools. This is the first time I've seen something like this when I was there as a volunteer. How can tourists be so well equipped?" The girl smiled, revealing her white teeth. After pulling the cotton candy, it looked like a pure white cloud. However, Yang Yi, who liked to eat it while it was hot, did not care about destroying this beauty. He first tore a small ball of cotton candy and stuffed it into his mouth. It was very soft and melted in his mouth. A sweet and fragrant feeling filled his taste buds, leaving him with an endless aftertaste. "Is it good?" Shishi watched curiously from the side. When she saw her father's satisfied expression, she couldn't help but say, "Papa, I want to eat too." Shishi had eaten until her stomach was bloated, but she still couldn't resist her appetite. Yang Yi naturally wouldn't mistreat his daughter. He held the stick in his left hand and extended the cotton candy over. Shishi couldn't wait to imitate her father's actions and wanted to try. "You don't have to do it. You can eat it yourself," Yang Yi quickly said. The little girl's hands had already been covered with a lot of bacteria from grabbing here and there. Of course, Yang Yi himself was not clean, but his immune system was very strong, unlike Shishi who was prone to diarrhea. The cotton candy seemed to have turned into glass fiber sugar. When it was eaten, it melted into syrup more easily than ordinary candy. Shishi immediately realized this sweet taste. She was so happy that her eyes narrowed. However, she didn't have time to express her feelings and kept eating. "Aren't you at school? Why did you come to the temple fair to sell cotton candy?" Yang Yi then asked the girl. This was his biggest doubt. Originally, when Yang Yi saw the girl in front of him for the second time, he was still a little vigilant. He subconsciously thought that there was danger, and wanted to leave the things and run away with Shishi. Fortunately, he quickly realized that this was no longer the life of a fugitive in his previous life, where he had to live in fear at all times. In the peaceful world of ordinary people, he had the identity of an ordinary person, and was an ordinary stay-at-home dad, who would be so bored as to want to deal with him. However, he was still used to the situation of this girl, and wanted to know more about it. The girl was stunned for a moment. She didn't hide anything and openly talked about her situation. Ding Xiang was the girl's name, which also implied her origin. She was a Miao girl from the mountains of Xiang province. Xiang Meizi was indeed a very ordinary girl. She was a second-year student majoring in electronic media at Jiangqing Media University. Her background was clean, and at the same time, her family was poor. During the school holidays, I will participate in some work-study activities outside of school to earn some living expenses. Ding Xiang's tan skin revealed the shyness of a young girl. She said embarrassedly, "Just like the volunteer I saw the last time, he was actually paid." 2 months ago, Ding Xiang was dragged to the temple fair by her roommates. Then she had the idea of setting up a stall at the fair. Last month, Ding Xiang gritted her teeth and bought some gadgets to sell. In the end, the business was good. The temple fair was indeed very popular and helped her earn half a month's living expenses. This time, Ding Xiang happened to find out from a lady who used to set up a stall that an old granny couldn't set up a stall because of her poor health. Therefore, Ding Xiang rented the old granny's cotton candy machine and sold cotton candy herself. This business was much more popular than buying gadgets. Moreover, cotton candy was simple and easy to make. Ding Xiang was kind-hearted and always made large amounts of cotton candy for her customers. Naturally, it attracted many people to buy it. I earned some for myself and I can give a portion to the old granny. She is so pitiful. The children at home don't take care of her, and she can only rely on her own small business to make a living. Ding Xiang smiled. Her white teeth were in sharp contrast to her dark skin. Yang Yi nodded silently. He couldn't understand Ding Xiang's poverty and difficulties. After all, Yang Yi felt that all difficulties needed to be broken by oneself. All wealth and happiness needed to be fought for by oneself. He could appreciate Ding Xiang's hardworking attitude, but it was difficult for him to be moved by it. After getting the information he wanted, Yang Yi didn't stay for too long. After saying goodbye to Ding Xiang, he left with Xixi. As for why he didn't give Ding Xiang some financial support? Please, Yang Yi wasn't a Virgin Mary who wanted to give money to a poor person. This wasn't Yang Yi's character. Moreover, from Yang Yi's point of view, this world was survival of the fittest. If one wanted to be above others, one had to put in 100 times the effort and not wait for others to support them. In Yang Yi's previous life, if he didn't rely on himself to fight his way out and relied on others to save him, he wouldn't have made it out of the training camp alive. Ding Xiang was a kind-hearted girl who didn't feel inferior and worked hard. Yang Yi felt that such a child would have a bright future. As for other things, he didn't have any other thoughts. Let her be tempered by suffering. Chapter 81. When Yang Yi took Cece to visit the temple fair, the scandal between Mo Fei and Zhu Jie quietly subsided. After all, Zhu Jie's reputation was too bad, and Mo Fei was unwilling to cooperate with him. Therefore, several media outlets were stirring things up, as if they were clowns dancing, and the attention on them had decreased a lot. In addition, a more shocking thing happened in the entertainment industry not long ago. With almost no warm-up, Harbor City star Chen Yijie's new album, Long Time Not Seen, which he had been working on for 2 years, was released. However, under such circumstances, the sales of Long Time Not Seen in the first 2 days were jaw-dropping, breaking the number of 1 million. One must know that the market for Cantonese songs itself was limited, and it didn't have a huge audience like Mandarin. The Copyright Association set the standard for a Cantonese album's platinum album at 5 million copies. Obviously, with the current momentum, it was only a matter of time before Long Time Not Seen got the honor of a platinum album. Moreover, whether it was the industry or Chen Yijie's fans, almost all of them had the highest praise for this album. The good reputation was hyped up, and it naturally had a great impact on the sales of this album. Interestingly, because the album Long Time Not Seen was full of Cantonese songs, the second title song of the same name was a Mandarin version, so the Mandarin entertainment industry also paid attention to this news. Soon, they found that the Mandarin song Long Time Not Seen was surprisingly good. As a result, in the vast Mandarin market, this song also began to spread. Although many people could only pay to download it through the internet, the popularity of this song had become a phenomenon. Who is Mu Xiang? More record companies and agencies responded quickly and cast their eyes on the two songwriters of the title song with different lyrics. However, because the Copyright Association's information was set to be unreadable by the author, those who were interested all ran into a wall. Of course, the popularity of Chen Yijie's new album was not good for Murphy. Although she bought the album to appreciate and learn, Murphy herself had to admit that the current level of attention she received had been affected, and this impact was reflected in the album sales. Murphy didn't care. Instead, she was very happy. She felt that the previous sales were too fake. She wanted real results, even if the results were very bad and would make her sad. However, she felt more relaxed than deliberately using scandals to cheat sales. After the deadline with Sister Ling, Murphy immediately asked Mo Xiaowan to meet with a familiar reporter and officially clarified to the public, "I, Murphy, am still single. Zhu Jie and I are just ordinary colleagues." The photos that were circulated before looked intimate because of the angle, but that's not the case. This clarification was very much like Murphy's style. Regardless of whether people would approve of it, after it was released, it didn't cause much of a stir. The fans that had been lost due to the previous scandals were also difficult to recover. The sales of her album, which had exploded due to the scandals in the beginning, had once again slowed down and declined. Finally, Murphy's last album sales week has passed. Although her album can still be sold, it now depends on the mood of the owners of the major stores and music stores. In some ways, the sales of records in this world were a bit like the release of a movie. The Copyright Association explicitly required all sales channels to reserve the first few rows of shelves for records released within a month. Of course, whether it sold well or not, and whether it was placed at the front depended on one's ability. To a certain extent, this protected the rights and interests of various creators, but it also made the competition in the record market more intense. Unless it was a boss who relied on feelings to support it, market factors often determined the retention of outdated records in their stores. Once this month was over, without the support of the Copyright Association's mandatory shelving month, records that didn't sell well would often be removed or left in an inconspicuous corner to eat dust. Obviously, Murphy's new album wasn't so good that it could still be retained after a month, especially in the very competitive entertainment industry of this world. According to the feedback from the company's marketing department, after the time point, Murphy's album sales began to decline in a precipitous manner from the next day onwards, with only a 2-digit daily increase. With such results, Murphy's blow was not only from the outside world's cynicism, but she could also clearly feel the change in the attitude of the other people in the agency towards her. There was less respect and praise from before, and more alienation and contempt. Mo Xiaowan felt it even more deeply. She had just gone to the bathroom and rushed back angrily saying, "What kind of people are they? Snobbish. They used to call me Sister Wan so sweetly, but now when we meet in the bathroom, they don't even want to say hello. They even rolled their eyes and spoke in a strange voice." Mo Xiaowan didn't want to tell Murphy that those people had said those unpleasant words, such as disdaining Murphy as a faded flower, saying that Murphy occupied the company's biggest resources, and blocked the development path of the small female stars they followed. These words were infuriating, and Mo Xiaowan didn't want Murphy to be in a bad mood after hearing them. "Forget it, we'll come back for the next album." Murphy put down the book in her hand and comforted her assistant cousin. "Actually, other people's criticism isn't without reason. I was too anxious to make a comeback and didn't choose a good song." Murphy began to reflect on herself. "Next time, I'd rather spend more time and have Sister Ling help me collect songs, choose good songs, and then polish them over and over again. I'm sure I'll be able to grind out a record that will satisfy the fans." Mo Xiaowan faintly sighed and said, "Sister, you make it sound simple, but how many years will this grind take? Your contract with Sister Ling is about to expire at this time next year. Not to mention anything else, it's hard to say if Sister Ling is willing to sign a contract with us. It's not a contract, but a lot of things will be restricted in the future." There were some words that Mo Xiaowan didn't say out loud. She felt that the company wouldn't continue to invest a lot of resources in collecting songs for Murphy. Without good songs, it would be useless no matter how long they grind. What's more, what do we do during this time? Don't we have to eat? Just shut ourselves in the recording studio and practice? Mo Xiaowan said with a headache. The entertainment industry is very cruel, and the economic contracts are the same. If Murphy earns money, the management company will split a lot of it with her. If she doesn't earn money, the management company won't give them a single cent to spend. Then I'll tell Sister Ling that I'll take on a few more commercial performances every month. Murphy was a little unwilling, but still said stubbornly, "Ai, sister, why are you working so hard?" Mo Xiaowan couldn't help but ridicule. Yes, why? Murphy obviously wasn't doing it for money, Nor was it for fame. Otherwise, she wouldn't have retired for Shishi. She also wouldn't have risked defending the TV station and rushed back to Jiangqing from Shanghai for Shishi. But she longed for this stage, longed for the state of singing for her fans on the concert stage. She liked singing and didn't want to give up so easily. Right. I can't give up. Murphy thought for a long time. Her conviction was once again firm. She said to Mo Xiaowan, "Xiaowan, it's already very late. You should go back first. I'll listen to a few more songs to get the feeling." Mo Xiaowan didn't move. She sat in her seat and stared blankly at the computer. "What's wrong, Xiaowan?" Murphy was curious and walked over. "Sister." Mo Xiaojuan's voice trembled with excitement. She pointed at the email page and asked, This name Mu Xiang, where have I seen it before?" Chapter 82. Mu Xiang. Murphy, who was still in a daze, walked over and looked at the email. Mo Xiaowan was Murphy's assistant and manager. Of course, she didn't just accompany Murphy everywhere and clean up after her. Other than the work arranged by the company, she also had to deal with many businessmen who were attracted by Murphy's fame. Then, she had to arrange Murphy's daily schedule. Not only that, Mo Xiaowan also had to help Murphy deal with her fans. It could be said that Mo Xiaowan didn't have as much free time as Murphy. In fact, she was even busier. For example, the email that Mo Xiaowan was using now was specially used to discuss collaborations. However, occasionally, fans would find this email and send some emails expressing their love for Murphy. From the title of the email that Murphy saw, it was very similar to this kind of email. To Murphy, a gift from an admirer. But since Mo Xiaowan brought it up in such a serious manner, Murphy read on curiously. The main text wasn't long. The general idea was that this fan was called Mu Xiang. He had admired Murphy for a long time and liked Murphy's singing very much. When he saw that Murphy's new album had suffered a setback, he felt indignant. He felt that it was because Murphy didn't choose her new songs well. Therefore, he offered 2 songs that he wrote for Murphy, hoping that she could pull herself together and make a comeback. Murphy understood that this wasn't an ordinary fan letter. This was a letter from a true fan. Murphy felt a burst of warmth in her heart. She felt that no matter how good this fan's songs were, she would definitely treat them seriously. Even if they weren't good, Murphy would definitely go to the recording studio to record a few tapes and send them to the fan to thank him for his concern and effort. However, when Mo Xiaowan saw Mo Fei's indifferent look, she became anxious instead. "Elder sister, can't you see it?" "Tell what?" "Mu Xiang." "Yeah, he's my fan." "What's wrong?" Murphy was puzzled. Mo Xiaowan rolled her eyes. She helplessly pushed her chair away and stood up. She hurriedly walked over to Murphy's cabinet and took down an album. Murphy recognized it at a glance. Wasn't it Chen Yijia's new album Long Time No See, that she had asked someone to help her buy a few days ago? However, Murphy was still a little confused and couldn't wrap her head around it. Mo Xiaowan took it and pointed to the first 2 songs. "Sister, who wrote these 2 songs?" Murphy did not have to look at it this time. She suddenly understood. Mu Xiang. No wonder this name sounded so familiar. So he wrote Long Time No See. And might as well not see each other for Chen Yijia. Murphy liked this album very much, especially these 2 songs. She had listened to the Cantonese song, Might As Well Not See Each Other, several times. Of course, Murphy could still speak Cantonese, because even though she grew up abroad, she had been developing in the mainland Chinese circle when she came back to China. But don't forget that Murphy's mother used to be a singer in Harbor City. Yeah, sister, Mu Xiang wrote songs for you. Mo Xiaowan was so excited that her whole body trembled. He is also your fan. Murphy frowned. She was not as excited as Mo Xiaowan. She still said calmly, "He shouldn't be Mu Xiang, right? How can there be such a coincidence?" Of course, whether it was Mu Xiang or not, Murphy still asked Mo Xiaowan to download the music score and print it out with great interest. "Sister, do you want a demo?" Mo Xiaowan asked. Murphy hesitated for a moment and said, "You can download it, but don't give it to me first." In the music field, a demo meant a sample record, And a demo usually meant that the composer recorded his general idea and gave it to the record company or the singer as a reference, which was the prototype of the song. But the big record companies usually ignored these demos because they were worried that it would affect the performance of the singers. Murphy had the same idea. As a professional singer who had been famous for a long time, she preferred to sing with her own ideas. Opening the music score, Murphy was stunned when she saw the title of the first song, First Dream. Looking at the lyrics below, Murphy was silent. "Sister, it's really written for you." Mo Shawan printed 2 copies and read the lyrics with great interest. She didn't know anything about music scores, so she exclaimed. Although Murphy didn't respond, her shocked and happy eyes had explained everything. Wasn't it written for her? If the dream didn't fall off the cliff, how would the persistent people have invisible wings? Weren't these lines about Murphy's current situation? Her dream had been thwarted and her wings were broken. Everyone was laughing at her, and they couldn't see her return and future. But Murphy still persisted on the path of her dream. Holding the first dream tightly in my hand, the place I wanted to go the most, how could I turn back halfway? The first dream will definitely be reached. Only when the true desire is realized can I be considered to have reached heaven. Murphy wanted to realize her music dream and continue to stand on the stage because that was her heaven. Now, even if she couldn't return to the stage, Murphy didn't intend to give up. It's definitely Mu Xiang. Mo Shawan felt that her judgment was right. She shouted, "Only Mu Xiang, who wrote Long Time No See, can write such good lyrics." Murphy didn't say anything. She actually agreed with Mo Xiaojuan's statement, because she could feel the melody of the song from the process of reading the score. Even if the melody of the song was different from that of Long Time No See, Murphy believed that the composer who could write such a beautiful melody and lyrics that touched the depths of people's hearts had his own pride. How could he impersonate someone else's name? Before looking at the second song, Murphy couldn't wait to turn around and walk to her exclusive recording studio. She turned on the equipment inside and entered the score of the first dream. The computer equipment would simulate the sound of the corresponding instruments and create the accompaniment. Of course, it couldn't be compared to playing the instruments, but it was enough for the time being. Murphy put on her headphones and closed her eyes. When the prelude was over, she hummed softly, "If pride wasn't coldly taken down by the real sea." No, it wasn't like that. It seemed like she should have added a few keys at the beginning. Murphy frowned, dragged the progress bar and started again. These were the struggles that one had to go through when recording a song. For every song to get the best feeling in the album, one had to be like Murphy in the beginning. One had to repeatedly consider each word and sentence and repeatedly modify one's singing style. This period was very boring, but just like Yang Yi's cooking, the delicacy had to wait. Of course, Murphy could have chosen the simple mode. If she listened to the demo recorded by Yang Yi, although she only hummed vaguely, she would know the basic singing style. But what was the point of that? Murphy wasn't Fan. She had her own style and her own voice. Naturally, she would perform her own brilliance. Mo Shawan stood outside the recording studio and helplessly patted her forehead. "AI, are we going to pull an all-nighter again?" She knew Murphy's style. When she worked, she didn't differentiate between day and night. Mo Shawan, who was Mo Fei's assistant and cousin, had no choice but to give up the idea of going home to sleep. She took her bag and went out to buy supper for Mo Fei. The first song was the first dream. Guess which song was the second? Chapter 83. In the early morning of the weekend, everything was quiet. Even the chirping cicadas seemed to have felt the deep sleepiness of the weekend, and were silent. Pa pa pa. A lonely figure appeared in the long corridor. Mo Shawan walked over with big and small bags. Even if the people on duty were still sleeping, Mo Shawan was used to this kind of loneliness. She wasn't afraid when she walked through the dark stairs. Fortunately, there were still a few rays of the morning sun shining in from the corridor. Several potted plants quietly bloomed under the sunlight, adding a bit of vitality. Mo Shawan opened the door to Murphy's exclusive studio and tiptoed in. What greeted her eyes was a somewhat messy workbench, and a sleeping beauty curled up on the folding bed behind it. Mo Shawan put down the breakfast in her hands, then looked at Murphy and sighed inwardly. This workaholic. It's been a few days and she still hasn't stopped? After Murphy got the two good songs, she was like a treasure in the recording studio every day. Fortunately, she didn't have any jobs recently, but there was a commercial performance. Mo Fei asked Mo Shawan to turn it down, and it was only after Mo Shawan persuaded her that Mo Fei was willing to postpone it. Murphy probably stayed up until the wee hours of the morning before sleeping. Mo Xiaojuan's movements didn't wake her up. Mo Shawan shook her head, picked up the blanket that Murphy dropped on the ground, and covered her with it. At this critical time, Murphy couldn't catch a cold. Otherwise, she would be even crazier if she couldn't sing. Mo Shawan tidied up Murphy's workbench, tidied up some of Murphy's notes, and pressed them with a silver paperweight. Then, she quietly walked to the recording studio next door. As a loyal fan of her cousin, Mo Shawan was very interested in the progress of Murphy's audition. She skillfully turned on the machine, then put on the monitoring headphones and listened to the recording left by Murphy with relish. If pride wasn't coldly smacked down by the reality of the sea, how would we know how hard we have to work to go far? Murphy sang this song, First Dream, very smoothly. Her unique ethereal voice brought out the helplessness and struggle of the song. This was different from the demo that Mo Shawan heard. Mo Fei's singing was indeed very good. Just like the lyrics of I can smell a kind of fragrance when I close my eyes when I'm tired, she was able to sing that kind of feeling of tiredness and laziness. It was very light, but as long as you listened carefully, you could feel it. However, don't think that this positive song was filled with negative energy because of Murphy's singing. Murphy sang the tiredness of the foreshadowing lyrics in the beginning, gradually transitioning to the lightness and excitement of the climax at the end. This transition didn't leave any trace at all. Mo Shawan, who was listening to the song, was also unknowingly infected by Murphy's emotions from the beginning. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly, as if she saw the dawn of a dream come true. If Sister Faye used this song as the main title of her comeback album, the sales would definitely be more than what it is now. After listening to the song, Mo Shawan secretly sighed. In this cruel and competitive entertainment industry, it was extremely difficult to make a comeback. The new album that had just suffered a setback was originally Murphy's best chance to make a comeback. After all, she had the status before her retirement, and also had a lot of nostalgic fans. Unfortunately, she didn't grasp this opportunity and released an album with very bad results, squandering her original popularity in an instant. How difficult would it be to start afresh with a new album in the future, to gather popularity from scratch? Not to mention the quality of the future album. Just talking about Murphy's opponents, they wouldn't sit back and watch Murphy's development. They would definitely stop and attack Murphy with all their strength like in the past few months. How could it be easy to break through? The first song ended in Mo Xiaojuan's imagination. She came back to her senses and clicked on the second song. Love Me Don't Go. This song was also sent to Murphy by Mu Xiang through email. At first, Mo Shawan felt that the quality of this song was not as good as the first song. Listening to the melody, she felt that it had a very strong Japanese rhythm and blues flavor. Mo Shawan didn't like this style of music, but Mo Shawan was very surprised by Murphy. Murphy, who rarely sang blues, actually showed a strong interest in this song. Before she could think too much, the music started and Murphy's voice came immediately. At this time, I'm still the same. The loneliness of the night makes people sad. I don't dare to think too much because I'm alone. Japanese songs were very free, but the singing was also very unique. Although Murphy rarely sang this type of song, with her singing skills, she could still easily control it. That kind of psychedelic, gentle, lingering charm was sung by Murphy incisively and vividly. P.S. Although the original singer of this song was Zhang Yu, who plays hip-hop, the female version is also very good. Everyone can find Mo Wei's version to listen to. At the climax, Mo Shawan finally heard Murphy's passionate side. Love me don't go, if you say you don't love me. I don't want to hear you really say it, give me a little more gentleness. In this section Murphy sang a little hysterically. It was different from the previous versions that Mo Xiaowan had heard. In the past, Murphy sang in a free and easy way, and also sang in a sad way. But it had never been like this, singing in such a helpless and sad way. Mo Xiaowan let out a heavy sigh. She understood what he meant. Murphy's song wasn't sung for Yang Yi, nor was it sung for some other man. Murphy was venting out the unspeakable urge to keep her fans who had left. The lyrics of this song were indeed very simple, unlike Mo Xiaochuan's favorite Long Time No See, which lacked variety. The second section was just a simple repetition of the first section. At that time, she had complained to Murphy that this song, Mu Ziang, didn't write seriously enough, and didn't seem like his ability. However, what could be better than repetition to express one's emotions? The moonlight elongates my shadow, walking aimlessly on the cold street. I don't have news of you because I miss you. Mo Fei did not stop as he did in the first section. Instead, he raised his voice and sang an impromptu blues song, transitioning the melody to the climax. Love me don't go if you say you don't love me. At this time Murphy's singing changed again. It wasn't as emotional as in the first section, but slowly sank from the high notes, singing with a heavy heart. Love me don't go. Murphy sang until the end. Her tone was a little sad. This was very rare. In the past, she rarely expressed such emotions directly. At most, she hid it in a roundabout way, requiring the listener to carefully experience it. Perhaps she really hoped that those fans who liked her would love me don't go. Chapter 84. While Murphy was practicing her song diligently, Yang Yi was not idle. He did 3 big things in the past few days. The first thing was to reach a cooperation agreement with Fu Jun, the boss of Sahara Publishing House. Yang Yi would invest 5 million yuan and get 49% of the shares of Sahara Online Bookstore. Fu Jun refused at first. Although the project of running Sahara Online Bookstore was not very profitable, he treated it as his own private toy and didn't want others to touch it. But Sahara Publishing House needed the physical copyright of Yang Yi's 2 books, so Fu Jun still came. As a result, he was attracted by Yang Yi's top-notch Blue Mountain coffee, and was also impressed by Yang Yi's advanced concept of online development. Fu Jun was the first person Yang Yi met who knew coffee and liked coffee, so he took out his treasured Blue Mountain coffee and shared it with Fu Jun. Fu Jun himself couldn't figure out whether it was the coffee or the philosophy that made him drunk. He decided to call Yang Yi his brother and sold 49% of his online bookstore's shares for 5 million. Of course, Sahara Online Bookstore was not worth 10 million yuan now. It seemed that Yang Yi had become a fool, but Fu Jun couldn't help but mutter, "I'm the one who lost a lot. According to what you said, my online bookstore can develop into a giant. I will definitely regret selling so many shares to you for 5 million yuan. Yang Yi smiled and patted him on the shoulder and said, "Do it well and strive to make Sahara as big as I said. By then, you will be a giant in the publishing industry. Even if you lost a little, I will allow you to come to my shop to drink coffee in the future. I will make it for you personally. Blue Mountain Luwak cat poop coffee, manned Helena, as long as I have it, you can drink it." Only then did Fu Jun leave with a smile on his face. Well, regarding the business part of the internet, Xiaohan will mention it briefly. These are just to make some money, so there is no need to describe it in detail. Everyone probably doesn't want to see the business war. The remaining 2 big things Yang Yi did were related to rejection. He rejected the olive branch thrown by Tianxiang Records. Speaking of the size of the company, Tianxiang Records was still a little shabby in Hong Kong, where every inch of land was worth gold. But in terms of scale and power, Tianxiang Records was not an existence that Murphy's Tianmei Entertainment could look up to. Although the producer of Chen Yijia's new album and the deputy music director of Tianxiang, Mao Su, had recommended Yang Yi to Hu Yongxiang as an excellent songwriter. Hu Yongxiang was really forgetful and forgot about it when he got busy. It wasn't until Chen Yijia's new album was released, and its results were dazzling in Hong Kong, that Hu Yongxiang thought of Yang Yi, a young man who was highly recommended by his father. But to everyone's surprise, in the face of Tianxiang's olive branch, Yang Yi nonchalantly rejected it. Help? Could it be that you've already accepted other companies' offers? Mao Su personally came to Jiangqing to meet Yang Yi because he wanted to become colleagues with Yang Yi and then discuss the true meaning of music together. But he didn't expect to be rejected. He was very surprised. No, it's just that I prefer freedom and don't like to be restrained. Yang Yi smiled faintly. If there's a chance, we can continue to work together, but not in the way of signing songwriters. I like to write my own music, not the music you want. As a musician, Mao Su could understand Yang Yi's idea very well. He nodded with some regret. By the way, please keep my personal information confidential. I don't want my life to be disturbed. Yang Yi added. Mao Su smiled. Of course we Tianxiang are not so tasteless. Besides, we don't want you to be targeted by our competitors. You're such an excellent songwriter. We'll have many opportunities to work together in the future. This rejection was a result that both sides could accept. However, the rejection of the third major matter was a little unpleasant. Previously, it was mentioned that the editors of Taijun.com wanted to poach Yang Yi to regain their lost popularity. They instructed a familiar publishing house to inquire about him. At that time, the people from the publishing house also came with manager Huang of Qiyu. Of course, they were also rejected. However, the editors of Taijun.com got hold of Yang Yi's address. So Ling Yunju brought Fishball and rushed over excitedly. He wanted to use his silver tongue to persuade Yang Yi to join Taijun.com. Yang Yi, you used to be a soldier, right? Me too. One look and I can tell that we have a special interest in military literature. Ling Yunju played the emotional card. Although Yang Yi received them in a friendly manner, he said that he had a 3-year contract with Qiyu. It's okay. Ling Yunju patted his bald head and said enthusiastically, Taijun.com has a strong background. Have you heard of army literature? As long as you're willing, we can recruit you under the name of the army. Who would dare to stop us? Ling Yunju did not know that his words made Yang Yi unhappy. One had to know that Yang Yi was most disgusted by people who talked about their background. Moreover, the reason why his predecessor had retired was that he had offended someone with a strong background. Although it had nothing to do with the current Yang Yi, it was still a living memory in his mind. Yang Yi could empathize with it. No need. Qiyu's offer is not bad. Yang Yi's voice became a little cold. However, Ling Yunju and Fishball did not feel it. Fishball even shouted, Qiyu is nothing. Is it comparable to Taijun.com in terms of military literature? If you join Taijun.com, I guarantee that your results will be much better than Qiyu's. Yang Yi did not deny this. After all, Taijun.com was the real gathering place of military fans. However, the problem was that even if the editors of Taijun.com did not make Yang Yi feel disgusted, he would not be willing to join Taijun.com. This was because Yang Yi did not like military literature. Since he did not like it, why would he change to another website to continue writing military literature? Military literature was just something that Yang Yi used to pass time. He had already thought of what to write for his next book. Moreover, it was definitely not going to be military literature. Of course, Yang Yi would not tell Ling Yunju and Fishball this. He only shook his head and looked at the clock in the cafe. He said calmly, Sorry, it's almost time. I have to prepare dinner for my daughter. This meant that he was sending them off. Ling Yunju did not look happy. As the deputy editor of Taijun.com, he had never been treated like this. You will regret it. Ling Yunju said angrily and left with Fishball. Fishball followed behind Ling Yunju and got into a taxi. However, he was young and impetuous. He could not help but ask, Xiao Ling, are we just going to let it go? Are we just going to let them read and suppress us? Ling Yunju's face was gloomy. He said coldly, Let it go? How is that possible? Fishball, go back and keep an eye on his physical publishing progress. Also, isn't Drawing Sword nearing its finale? Check when his new book will be released. Refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit. He will definitely regret this. Chapter 85. Last week, the second title song of Chen Yijia's new album, Long Time No See, became popular in China. Yang Yi's shop, which was named the coffee shop on the street corner, received the attention of some students and spread among the student body. Although they felt that it was more likely to be a coincidence, there were always some students who came to East Gate to drink coffee. They even forced Yang Yi to play the song again and again. It made Yang Yi want to vomit. Because of this coincidence, Yang Yi's coffee shop had an unexpected increase in popularity last week. It went from a situation where there were at most 3 or 4 customers a day to a situation where there was almost no shortage of customers in the afternoon. Although it was still not a lot, only about 20 customers a day, at least it looked like there was hope for a return. Unfortunately, the good times did not last long. In the blink of an eye, it was July. Jiangcheng Media University was also on holiday. The students gradually left the university. Yang Yi's coffee shop became deserted again. However, Yang Yi was still very happy. He liked this half-dead state. It allowed him to read books and listen to music. Why don't I close the shop and take a few days off? Yang Yi had such an idea. Actually, he had only opened the shop for a few days. He would close the shop from time to time and take his daughter out to play. A boss like him would lose money no matter what he did. The good news was that Xi, who had gone home to stay with her mother for a few days, was finally back. Murphy also followed Xi to Yang Yi's house for dinner. She, who was a little tired and confused before, found her confidence again. The cold, arrogant girl in sunglasses appeared in front of Yang Yi again. However, this time, she came with her luggage. Recently, I've been a little tired from practicing songs. Xiaowan asked me to take a break and come out for a walk. Murphy no longer had to maintain a cold look in front of Yang Yi. Although her expression was still a little cold, her voice was very soft. I don't know where I can go, and I'm afraid of being photographed by reporters. Can I just stay at your house for 2 days? Is that okay? Yang Yi didn't need to ask to know that his 2 songs had worked. Previously, he had received a thank you email from Mo Fei. He didn't know if it was written by Mo Fei or Mo Xiaowan. Of course. Yang Yi smiled and reached out his hand. Murphy understood and handed the luggage in her hand to Yang Yi. Then, she held her daughter's hand and followed Yang Yi upstairs. Mom, are you going to live with Papa like Xi? Xi was very excited. This was the scene she had been looking forward to. She couldn't help but jump up the stairs. Xi didn't walk properly. She had to jump up every time to go up the stairs. Yeah, but it's only for 2 days, Murphy said faintly. Mom still has work, so she has to go back in 2 days. Okay then. Xi was still very happy. She tilted her head and said innocently, Then tonight, will Papa and Mom sleep with Xi? This question Yang Yi, who was carrying the luggage, couldn't help but stiffen for a moment. Murphy's cold and elegant face couldn't help but blush. She secretly glanced at Yang Yi's back and waist, and her tone was no longer calm. She said reproachfully, Xi, what nonsense are you talking about? Tonight, you sleep with Mom. Your Papa will sleep alone. Murphy raised her voice so that Yang Yi could also hear it. Ahem, yes, there are still many rooms upstairs. Papa will tidy them up later. There's no need to worry about not having a room to sleep. Yang Yi walked to the corner of the stairs. He glanced at Murphy awkwardly and then said to Xi, Is that so? Xi pouted her small mouth and said unhappily, But Xi wants Papa and Mom to accompany me. However, Yang Yi and Murphy didn't respond at this time. Both of them felt that this topic was a bit awkward. Although Yang Yi was more open, when he exchanged glances with Murphy, there was a hint of inquiry. In your dreams? Murphy glared at Yang Yi in annoyance. Then she turned her head, and her neck was a bit red. Although Murphy grew up abroad, in fact, her family was very traditional. Therefore, she had always been a very conservative woman. Otherwise, when Yang Yi saved her, it wouldn't have been the first time. At home, naturally Yang Yi personally cooked. Every time he made new and novel dishes for Murphy, but no matter what kind of dishes he made, they were all delicious. This made Murphy, who was somewhat picky about food, even began to taste the celery that she almost didn't eat before. It's not bad, right? Yang Yi saw Murphy's second chopstick. He smiled and said, I chose the more tender celery, cut it into small pieces, and then stir-fried it with tofu and wood ear. The original taste of celery will be much lighter and more delicious. Murphy's eating posture was still very elegant. When she ate a piece of celery, she picked it up like a little hamster and nibbled it bit by bit. She didn't want to open her mouth, as if it would affect her image. On the other hand, she ate more happily. She was presumptuous in her father's house. Her small spoon spilled the rice in the bowl all over the table. Yang-yi, a guy with obsessive-compulsive disorder, actually felt very uncomfortable every time he saw Shishi like this. But gradually he got used to it. Anyway, since it was going to spill, he would clean it up after dinner. But Shishi didn't like celery. She shook her head and asked her father to take the celery out. Then she pointed to the white tofu and said, "I don't want to eat celery. Celery tastes bad. Shishi likes to eat this." You can't be picky about food. Children should eat everything to have a balanced nutrition. Murphy, however, insisted on giving Shishi a big piece of celery with her chopsticks and seriously educated her. Suddenly, Murphy turned her head and glared at Yang-yi, who was beaming with joy, and said, "What are you laughing at? Did I say something wrong?" Yang-yi smiled and shook his head. He said, "You're still talking about Shishi. When I was cooking just now, who was the one who said that she didn't want to eat celery?" "That's right." Shishi thought that she was supported by her father. She pouted her small mouth and agreed. He was educating his daughter. This guy, he actually dared to undermine her. Murphy was so angry that she didn't want to show the scene of parents quarreling in front of Shishi. Below the table, she stretched out her leg and kicked Yang-yi. But who knew that she would accidentally kick Yang-yi's face bone? It was so hard that she almost twisted her foot. Ouch! Murphy frowned and sucked in a breath of cold air. Yang-yi's reaction was actually a little slow. In a comfortable environment, he lowered his guard a lot. He only reacted when Murphy kicked him. But his movements were very fast. He subconsciously reached out and grabbed Murphy's foot. It was smooth to the touch. Like brocade, Murphy was still wearing black stockings. Yang-yi didn't realize that something was wrong. Instead, it was this feeling that made him subconsciously touch it. From the ankle to the foot, it was petite, warm, and smooth. He now felt that something was wrong. He raised his head and saw Murphy, who was frowning in pain but looking at him with shame and anger. Oh no! You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.